Good morning, America. Welcome to Right Side Broadcasting Network. Speaker Johnson and GOP leadership to hold yet another press conference on this day 22 of the government lockdown. That will be at 10 in the morning. And we are joined by Congressman Barry Moore of the great state of Alabama, the Yellowhammer state that is been in the news recently, Congressman, as you are seeking the United States Senate seat that is open. Tell us about the infrastructure coming into this great state in Huntsville, specifically with space defense and military defense, thanks to the leadership of President Trump.
We're great in the defense industry, got some military bases that are amazing, a port that's amazing. So for us to have Spacecom coming to the rightful home in Alabama, we're looking forward to helping build the Golden Dome to protect this nation from threats from around the globe.
You know, I always wanted to go to space camp as a kid growing up in the Chicago, Illinois area, but I learned quickly studying at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign that I wasn't quite an engineer, but I know that that's attracting many people to this great state. Tell us about this government shutdown. You did your due diligence in the House with the House leadership and Speaker Johnson to pass a clean CR. It's now in the United States Senate. It has been filibustered by the far left Democrats. You want to be the United States Senator to represent Alabama. How can, I guess, 5 common sense Democrats come across the aisle and just get 7 weeks of a clean government open so debate can continue?
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, we did our job. We sent a clean 24-page, pretty simple, no Republican wish list up to the Senate and said, okay, do your job, keep the government open, and we'll go through the appropriations process and budget as we should as a nation. And so Schumer's got this left wing in his party. And look, they placated that crowd. It cost them a tremendous number of votes in the election where President Trump won all the swing states, the Electoral College, and the popular vote. And so if anything, you think they would wake up, and yet still they're running down this rabbit hole to try to justify to their communist Marxist wing of the party that, hey, we're going to hold the line against this horrible guy, President Trump, whose actually poll numbers have went up since the shutdown. And so we've done our job. We've sent it over there. We've cut, spending over the last 10 months. And what they want to do basically in this leveraging the American people and the government being open, they want to undo the first 10 months of this president's administration. And we're simply not going to do that. And so I think now that maybe since the No Kings rally is over and Chuck was allowed to march with the Marxists and the communists in New York City, maybe some of those guys will come to the table, common sense, like you say, and go, hey, you voted for this in May. You voted for it, I think, 13 times under the Biden administration. Why now will you not come to the table and open the government? Why punish the American people for a political stance? And that's where we're at in this thing. And I think we got to hold the line. I don't think we should cave. I think they voted 11 times. You put the pressure on Schumer and some of the people in his party to do the right thing, and that's what we need to do.
Well, I think for the lifers who have been in Congress, someone like Senator Chuck Schumer since 1981 in Congress, I think he's used to seeing Republicans cave. But this group, this team, really standing strong with a thin, narrow lead in leadership, with Mike Johnson really making it very well known that these are the new standards of negotiation. So I think, first of all, they're definitely surprised. I was curious, Congressman, if you could answer this for us. 175 President Trump appointments getting through because of a rule change in the Senate, thanks to Majority Leader John Thune. Many people asking out there, can't you simply change this on a continuing resolution? Can you explain that in Congress, why this specific reopening of the government needs that 60 votes in the Senate?
I think the concern is if we do it for this, then down the road, if in fact the Democrats ever had the majority, they'd want to make D.C. a state. They'd want to make some of these other territories a state. They'd want to stack the Supreme Court. So we have to be mindful that we're following the rule of law, and we don't open an opportunity for the Democrats, if they had the Senate, to totally transform a country in a direction we wouldn't want to take it in. So I think that's the concern, and we have to make sure we're adhering to the Constitution, we're doing things properly. And so that's certainly above my pay grade, but I think you're right. When you talk about leadership and John Thune and Speaker Johnson and President Trump for us to hold the line and actually put downward pressure on spending and say we're going to do the appropriations process. I think that sends a message. That's what the American people voted for. If you see it on social media, when they see us, doing the job we're doing in Israel, when we're getting 8 peace negotiations, when we're shutting down 8 wars and working on number 9, those are the things they sent us here to do, not to cave to the left. And certainly we don't want to violate the Constitution in the process. So I think we have to be methodical in how we approach this. And I think that's what we're doing. And look, like I said, it's above my pay grade, but I'm proud of our leadership. I'm proud of our members for holding the line and putting the America First agenda ahead of politics and doing what we need to do to try to make this thing move in a direction that American people voted for.
Do you have concerns about the Chinese Communist Party, what happened during the Auto Pen administration, buying up so much of America's agricultural land, mostly around our military bases? And we saw millions of acres being purchased and consumed, used by the CCP. How would you like to reverse that within Alabama, specifically giving its robust agricultural community and the farmland right here?
Yeah, we have to reverse it. Actually, I was with Brooke Rollins, Secretary of Ag, yesterday for a couple hours on a panel. That was one of the things, the topics of discussion. Obviously, there's a lot of things going on in agriculture right now, but we don't need foreign countries owning our land, because the one thing that sets us apart as a nation is we can feed our people and we can feed the world. And when we lose that ability, it doesn't matter how tech savvy you are, it doesn't matter the other things. When you go to war, and I was in the military, it's beans and bullets. And we do a fine job of producing bullets in this country and doing the things we need to do to build defense. But we got to be able to feed our troops and feed our people. That keeps us from being dependent on these bad actors around the globe for subsistence for our people. And so for us, we certainly don't need foreigners owning our land. We need to open up some, I think, of the federal and state lands for grazing and for opportunities for farmers. I don't like the idea of the government owning so much land and taking it out of production. So there's a lot of things we can do to make sure we can feed our people. And I think President Trump's on the right track. And look, we don't need foreign bad actors owning property next door to military bases. That's never a good thing.
Now, I don't want to make light of this government shutdown, the longest in history, a full shutdown, and it must reopen because billions of dollars are being wasted. And as you mentioned, Congressman, feeding America, some people are dependent on government being open for those resources for various reasons. So I do not want to make light of that. With that said, are there opportunities, as we've heard, with a potential Doge 2.0 to trim even more fat in this process and discover the bureaucracy that might be within the federal city so that it could be even clean and more efficient in the days ahead?
Absolutely. And I think, President Trump's already mentioned this. He figured out a way to pay the active duty soldiers on the 15th, which was important. That was the middle of the month. A lot of those folks get paid bi-monthly. And so I think in addition to that, I would love to see President Trump, Rush Vaught, director of OMB, look for the low-hanging fruit. Those horrible programs that were put in place when Biden and Schumer and Pelosi were running the country. Take those pots of money, spend them on things the American people believe in, whether it's defense, paying our soldiers, opening the government up. Start putting the pain in the lap of Schumer and his crowd and saying, look, it may be rough on the American people. You think politically this is savvy, but we're going to take those pots of money that you put in places that have no business being spent, American taxpayer dollars, and fund the government for what it should be doing. And so if I'm President Trump, that's the direction I'm moving. I'm sure they're looking at that Doge 2.0, as you mentioned. Yeah, find those pots of money, use those things to get the government, and plus, don't ever open those programs again. We're in charge. Let's do this. Let's take this money, put it where we can get the government back up and going, fund the areas that are important, and then let these silly programs that, whatever that looks like around the globe, that we're funding some sort of trans surgeries for somebody in the middle of nowhere, and say, hey, that money's going to be spent on American people, on government employees to get our government back up and going.
It's rather remarkable what our government has spent money on, especially in the last quarter century. So, Congressman Moore, I have to ask, you have Senator Tuberville, who's leaving Washington to become governor of Alabama. That is his goal in the next cycle. He says you can't get anything done in Washington. You got to be there 30 plus years. What are your goals? Why do you want to be the next United States Senator for Alabama?
So my goal, as the first elected official in the nation to endorse Donald Trump 10 years ago, August 21st, 2015, I've been in the fight with him since the beginning of time. And this American First policy thing, the thing that he's doing, the populace giving the voice back to the American people, I've been in that fight with him. And look, I'm a member of House Freedom Caucus, Alabama's a conservative state, so I've got incredible liberty scores. Coach and I, if you look at our scores, we're always 1 or 2 in the delegation of being conservative, plus being the first to endorse Trump, the relationships we have. I think there's an opportunity for us here. Look, I got a job. I could stay in Congress, like you said, for a long, long time, but we felt called to get in the fight with him 10 years ago. Now we feel called to step up and stand with him in the Senate because I'm a known commodity. I'm an honest broker. There is no question about where I'm at and what I'll do. And look, the pressure's been applied to old Barry Moore too. I mean, they've come after me, the system has, but I've always been willing to stand. And so it's not that there are other bad people in this race. It's just we're trying to fill Tuberville's shoes. I'm a known commodity. I think I'll continue to do the job. When I call the president, he takes my calls. That's good for Alabama. That's good for our state.
Congressman Barry Moore of the great state of Alabama, you help it make it great as it is, sir. And I'm sure we'll have you on more in the coming year for 2026. We're excited for the upcoming midterms, and please come visit us again on Right Side Broadcasting Network.
Glad to do it. Thank you.
And as we cover today's news, House Speaker Mike Johnson and GOP leadership will be giving yet another press conference on this unprecedented 22nd day of lockdowns, a full lockdown that is really unlike what took place in 2008 and 1995 with those partial shutdowns. And this is the unstoppable force that is Speaker Mike Johnson versus the immovable object, Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer. So we'll see as these negotiations continue and get all updates from House Republican leadership there. Our thanks to Congressman Barry Moore of Alabama for joining us, candidate for the United States Senate, as it's that time of year again, cold and flu season. We have seen it in so many different ways, but even a strain of COVID, can you believe it? It's still around. So allfamilypharmacy.com/RSBN, your go-to. Scan that QR code there for RSBN 10% off of Tamiflu, ivermectin, antibiotics, antivirals, and much, much more for your health, for your family, for your future. If it's no insurance, if that's the problem, well, there's no red tape, there's no bureaucracy with these doctors and pharmacists, nurses who care about making you healthy in this time of year and really year round, actually. Allfamilypharmacy.com/RSBN, providing those generics that are life-saving, right to try, to most favored nation status. They endorse all of this that President Trump and his team at Health and Human Services working diligently on with Bobby Kennedy Jr., the good secretary, Doctors Marty McCary and Mehmet Oz. You've seen it a lot in the news lately, so get ahead of the pharmaceuticals and stock up your medicine cabinet. You could take these great medications on vacation with you as well. It's also NAD+, methylene blue. These drugs are being found to actually not only help with sleep, but Alzheimer's, dementia, so many other things that science discovering with this. Here's the problem this year as well, or this time of year. Urgent cares to doctor's offices, even pharmacies, sometimes way, way, way backed up. So go to the online pharmacy that can get you affordable medication online in real time. You don't have to wait too long. allfamilypharmacy.com/RSBN. And Monetary Gold, it's wealth security preservation. Get your complimentary presidential gold guide today. Call today. Do not delay. Ask how you can eliminate your IRA fees permanently and for life. It's RSBNforthegold.com. RSBNforthegold.com. Call immediately to discover just how you can eliminate those fees. Robert Kiyosaki warning us this year of 2 bank failures, nearly 500 during the Obama administration. So why not grab a complimentary gold guide for your options, whether it's generational wealth to simply buying that first or second property. You can find that all there at Monetary Gold for wealth, security, preservation. Grab the complimentary presidential gold guide today. 888-617-7994, rsbnforthegold.com. Thank you for sponsoring us on the right side of history. As we look to the top of the hour for Speaker Johnson and GOP leadership to hold yet another press conference. This is day 22 of the lockdown, and that will be with us at 10 in the morning. So stick with us here. We hope you're having a wonderful morning. Good morning, America, to you on yet another gorgeous fall day in the federal city. Also a gorgeous day at our home studios here in Auburn, Alabama. It's the loveliest village on the plains, and we're excited to see this golden era as it continues to develop over the course of the next year. Now, President Trump has been diligently working on a number of different items, from Israeli peace in Gaza, countless Arab and Muslim countries who were once enemies dating back for 3,000 years to the state of Israel, and prior to its inception in 1948, coming together really for the world. We saw the peace plan signed and enacted just last week in Egypt, and then the vice president, they're observing everything on the ground as well. In a recap video, in case you missed it, cut number 1, yes, Vice President J.D. Vance on an unannounced trip to southern Israel to observe the systems command and the military that will be helping observe with the assistance of the United Kingdom, again, the state of Israel, the United States, to make sure that aid gets into Gaza and that peace continues to move forward.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's great to have you. Look, I think that we are 1 week into President Trump's historic peace plan in the Middle East, and things are going, frankly, better than I expected that they were. This is a very, very tough situation. You have two peoples, two enemies who have fought a very tough conflict against each other. You have a terrorist organization on one hand that murdered a lot of innocent people. You've got an Israeli army that was defending itself on the other, that has learned a lot over the past couple of years. And, of course, you have an innocent civilian population in Gaza that's caught in the middle. But we're here at the Civilian Military Cooperation Center, which we are announcing the opening of. You have Israelis and Americans working hand in hand to try to begin the plan to rebuild Gaza, to implement a long-term peace, and to actually ensure that you have security forces on the ground in Gaza, not composed of Americans, who can keep the peace over the long term. So we've got a lot of work left to do. This is going to take a very, very long time, but I think Steve Witkoff, Jared Kushner, and Admiral Cooper behind me have done an incredible job. I want to say just a couple of quick things, and then I want to turn it over to Steve Witkoff. Number one, the Israeli government has been remarkably helpful in this. I want to thank them, thank our Israeli partners, and all the folks particularly who are working hand in hand with their American friends here at the CMCC. And number two, I want to say that there is this weird attitude I've sensed in the American media and the Western media where there's almost this desire to root for failure, that every time something bad happens, that every time that there's an act of violence, there's this inclination to say, oh, this is the end of the ceasefire, this is the end of the peace plan. It's not the end. It is, in fact, exactly how this is going to have to happen when you have people who hate each other, who have been fighting against each other for a very long time. We are doing very well. We are in a very good place. We're going to have to keep working on it, but I think we have the team to do exactly that.
And the President of the United States taking to Truth Social to explain these ongoing developments that number two, Mr. Producer, numerous of our great allies, now great allies in the Middle East, and areas surrounding the Middle East, have explicitly and strongly, with great enthusiasm, informed me that they would welcome the opportunity at my request to go into Hamas if Hamas continues to act badly in violation of their agreement with us. Now, the love and spirit for the Middle East has not been seen like this in 1,000 years. It is a beautiful thing to behold. And I told these countries in Israel, not yet. There is still hope that Hamas will do what is right. If they do not, it will end Hamas in a fast, furious, and brutal way. I would like to thank all those countries that called to help. Also, I would like to thank the great and powerful country of Indonesia and its wonderful leader for all the help they have shown and given us in the Middle East. And to the USA, to everyone, thank you for your attention to this matter, President Donald J. Trump. And that's quite simply why President Trump yesterday receiving really an exquisite award. There is the Nobel Peace Prize. It is perhaps more well known than this, but this is not obtained by most. This is something that is really, truly part of the American ethos. And number 7, Mr. Producer, the Architect of Peace Award by the Richard M. Nixon Presidential Foundation, awarded to President Donald Trump for his pursuit of peace. And although we know that, sadly, the 37th president resigned at the time in disgrace, if you look back at the history, he is arguably one of the most fantastic statesmen albeit the man had demons, but he was tough in the political circles, just like President Trump is tough, but he forged ahead, striving for that peace, striving to discuss with people and to open dialogue between civilizations that once closed one another off. This is a well-deserved honor, and President Nixon's daughter and son-in-law on hand for this, as well as President Trump presented with the extraordinarily prestigious Nixon Architect of Peace Award. And the Nixon family on hand to observe the new wall of fame that President Trump put up with cut number 10. If we could show that there with Tricia Nixon Cox, daughter of the 37th president, his son-in-law as well on hand for that. President Trump shows President Nixon's daughter there the presidential wall of fame at the White House colonnade, and President Richard Nixon mentioning in that inaugural address, the greatest honor history can bestow is the title of peacemaker. And today we celebrate the Nixon and Trump legacies. In this day 22 of a lockdown, we'll have Speaker Johnson up at the top of the hour with GOP leadership. Thank you to Kalshi.com/RSBN for sponsoring us here at the network. The New York City mayoral race now less than 2 weeks away. Early voting starting on Saturday. Will the communist Democrat Zohran Mamdani be successful in this? God forbid. What about the Democrat turned independent, the former governor of the Empire State, Andrew Cuomo? Will he make a political comeback not near the likes of Donald Trump, but relatively close? He had plenty of lawfare go his direction. Can he pull off a game changer? Will Bitcoin hit 150K mark before March of 2026? Scan that QR code there now for all those questions. Will the Los Angeles Dodgers repeat the World Series championship? They are back in the big dance and the Fall Classic, which I believe gets underway this weekend. So we'll watch all of that very closely at Kalshi.com/RSBN. Trade on anything. And in the meantime, it's not only cold and flu season, but it's that dry skin season right now in the autumn. So AngelPaste.com has you covered. Experience the miracle that is the original OG Miracle Cream, the vitamin B infused, non-GMO, no chemicals. It got the whole gang started. A Christian-owned company. They hire veterans as well out of Spring, Texas, right off the Gulf of America. An orange option with vitamin C infused, a great way to remain healthy this time of year. Also a natural facial spray. Hundreds of different options right there for you at angelpaste.com. Thank you for your sponsorship on the right side of history. And covepure.com/RSBN. I'm particularly very, very passionate about this leader in reverse osmosis technology, clear wave technology, specifically removing 99.9% of the impurities out of your drinking water. JAMA Pediatrics doing a study that children drinking out of the tap on a regular basis can lose more than 2 points on their IQ. Not so good as you're growing up, and not so good considering what's happened after COVID with learning issues in countless different districts across the country. Remember those lead pipes in Flint, Michigan? Well, lead can lead to cancer in the bladder, brain cancer, liver damage. You just don't want that in your clean drinking water. So get ahead of the game. Don't rely on government to solve all those problems. Utah and Florida getting out in front of it and putting out legislation to remove fluoride from the water. And this machine does exactly what Secretary Kennedy has been talking about for 30 plus years in his career leading up to this time of reawakening. Getting the fluoride, agricultural runoff, pesticides, hormone-disrupting birth control out of the water. Even the water treatment plant cannot get all of those substances 100% out of the water. So that's why you need something like covepure.com/RSBN. That's no bigger than your coffee machine on your kitchen counter. Scan the QR code there now. Get $200 off. Drink pure, live pure. It's covepure.com/RSBN. RSBN. Thank you for your sponsorship on the right side of history as we await Speaker Johnson and GOP leadership to hold a press conference at the top of the hour. We'll take a quick commercial break here with Right Side Broadcasting Network. Don't change that dial. It's a beautiful morning in the United States of America.
Welcome to Right Side Broadcasting Network, your trusted conservative news outlet. At RSBN, we deliver the truth when the mainstream media falls short. Since 2015, we've proudly broadcasted every single one of President Trump's iconic MAGA rallies, bringing you the excitement and energy live before anyone else. By watching RSBN, you get an unfiltered front row view of the action on the ground. We interview the crowds to give a voice to millions of Americans just like you. We show you President Trump's speeches in their entirety, free from interruptions and censorship. We cover the stories that matter to you with the integrity and passion you deserve. Thank you for choosing RSBN as your home for America First News. Together, we stand strong, united, and informed. So join us and be part of the right side of history.
Tired of being told no by your doctor, your pharmacy, or worse, your insurance company? You're not alone. Millions of Americans are waking up to a broken healthcare system. That's why more and more people are turning to All Family Pharmacy. We believe in medical freedom. We deliver the prescription and the medication, all from licensed U.S. doctors and pharmacists, from ivermectin and trusted antibiotics to maintenance medications, even NAD+, the revolutionary anti-aging supplement. Use code RSBN10 at checkout for 10% off your first order.
Every once in a while, something big happens, something that changes everything. And now, in a defining moment for crypto, Trump Media Group and Crypto.com are joining forces to acquire up to $6.4 billion of CRO, launching America's first ever CRO treasury, empowering the Kronos blockchain. This is more than a partnership. It's the future of finance built in America. For more, visit Crypto.com, where millions trade CRO every day.
Hey y'all, it's Silk from the Diamond and Silk Chit Chat live show. Look, don't forget to check me out right here on RSBN Network. Be sure to watch the show on Right Side Broadcasting Network, and I want you to support Right Side Broadcasting Network. Yes, it's imperative that you do so, okay? I look to see y'all soon. Bye-bye.
Welcome back to Right Side Broadcasting Network. Speaker Johnson and GOP leadership to have a press conference at the top of the hour. In the meantime, we'll go through the news and talk to you about what's happening inside and outside of the Beltway. Well, President Trump had some comments regarding the shutdown just yesterday in the Oval Office with cut number 5 and 6, Mr. Producer. We can play those to recap some of his recent thoughts.
I'd love to meet with them. I just want them to open up the country first. You know, the country is so hot right now, and they've never voted against, continuation. They've never voted against. They've never done that. They're doing this because they have Trump derangement syndrome. But I would love to meet. I would like to meet with both of them. But I set one little caveat. I will only meet if they let the country open. They have to let the country open. The people want to go back to work. They want to be served. They need the services of some people. And a lot of people need the money, the payroll. So I'll do it as soon as they open up the country. I'd like to meet with them.
So to be clear, you won't meet with them until the government's open.
The government has to be open, yeah. The government has to be open. You know how long it would take for them to do that? Just say, okay, government's open, that's it. There is nothing.
How long
They're
do you
not
think this could
negotiating.
go?
What they're doing is saying they lost the negotiation, and when we got the great big beautiful deal done, they lost that negotiation. Now they're saying, well, we want to get some of the things we lost. But the problem is the things they lost are very bad for our country. We don't want to have people come over from all over the world, from prisons and all, and have them have their health care paid for. We want to take care of people that are American citizens and all. So they want $1.5 trillion of money to be wasted and jeopardize the health care of other people. We're not going to do that. So I would love to meet with them. We want the country open first.
And President Trump celebrating Diwali as he was making those comments and really reflecting on the relationship between the United States and India, and something that has stood the test of time. Prime Minister Modi, a dear friend of President Trump. There's no question about that. As we celebrate those, and a happy Diwali to those who are celebrating this week. It was rather fun. I have friends north of Atlanta, really throughout Atlanta, as you know, that is home for me, my adopted home, and seeing all the lights there in the Indian community, really fantastic. So a very happy Diwali to my friends celebrating. But President Trump making comments right before that to United States senators in the new and improved Rose Garden Club, which is right off of the Oval Office, and speaking with not only the leadership in the Senate, but touching on this shutdown and what's next for the government reopening with cut number 9, Mr. Producer.
I want to just say from the beginning, our message has been very simple. We will not be extorted on this crazy plot of theirs. They've never done this before. Nobody has. You always vote for an extension. Chuck Schumer and the Senate Democrats need to vote for the clean, bipartisan CR and reopen our government.
And I'm really laughing about this because I've seen some Democrats take to social media, elected Democrats, and say, who is paying for this teardown of the East Wing of the White House? Well, it's all privately funded. And they said, God forbid it's during a shutdown. Maybe they should call up their colleagues and Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer and demand that this government reopen, because ultimately it's a PR stunt and it's not going very well for our Democrat friends. Now, according to the White House ballroom continues a proud presidential legacy, which there's no question about that. Let's take a tour through the presidents that have created a new and improved White House over the years. And the latest instance of manufactured, outraged, unhinged leftists have made their fake news allies clutch together and say, why, Mr. President, are you doing this? A visionary of a grand scale. This president is a builder and developer. We know that. This is something he's extraordinarily passionate about. We watched it last Wednesday night when all those donors came to the East Room for a dinner and the updates on what is happening to the beautification of Washington, D.C. Now, President Trump's visionary plan for the ballroom is a bold, necessary addition that echoes the storied history of improvements throughout presidential history and renovations from commanders-in-chief to keep the executive residence as a beacon of American excellence. This is a fact. For more than a century, U.S. presidents have been renovating and expanding and modernizing the White House to meet the needs of the president. Therefore, in 1902, President Teddy Roosevelt built the West Wing, replacing expansive greenhouses constructed during the Jefferson administration and establishing the modern-day executive office wing with a classically leaning design, along with a colonial garden and East Terrace, which eventually became the East Wing. 7 years later, in 1909, President William Howard Taft remodeled and expanded the West Wing, which included construction on the first Oval Office. And William Howard Taft is an excellent study in history, not only because of his sheer size and might. He had to put in a new bathtub because of how large he was. But he also went on to be the Chief Justice of the United States Supreme Court, citing that the presidency was the worst job he ever had and was the loneliest he ever was, which is really quite interesting because, as we know, with Bush 41, for example, former President George H.W. Bush, which has become more of a modern tradition, leaving that letter to your successor, writing to President-elect Bill Clinton on January 20th of 1993, that I did not experience the loneliness that some presidents do. In fact, it was truly not only the honor of a lifetime, but I hope you have the solace and the support that I received while in office, specifically from the staff that works overtime there. And as the president put it yesterday, that the food is good here. at the White House. So in 1913, President Woodrow Wilson demolished the Colonial Garden, modernizing it with the Rose Garden. In 1927, President Calvin Coolidge oversaw the renovation of the upper floors and the attic of the White House. In 1929, President Herbert Hoover remodeled the West Wing completely, including reconstruction work in the basement level and remodeling of the first floor. And a fire on Christmas Eve of all times, the West Wing reopened and was repaired in 1930. His successor in 1934, President Franklin Delano Roosevelt, overhauled the West Wing, adding a second floor and a larger basement and a swimming pool, and relocating the Oval Office to its current location. In 1942, President Roosevelt also constructed the East Wing as it was seen up until just days ago. Now, in 1948, President Truman undertook a total reconstruction of the White House's interior, expanding its foundation and footprint, preserving only its exterior walls. It was needed because of crumbles that were happening and actually black mold going throughout the building. You're looking at a building that is roughly now 225 years in the making. The only president who did not live at the executive residence was the father of our country, General George Washington. John Adams moving in towards the end of his term. Now, in 1962, President John Fitzgerald Kennedy constructed the modern Rose Garden as we saw it today and as we see it, but also the First Lady, Mrs. Kennedy, was very instrumental in the beautification of that Rose Garden. In 1970, President Nixon converted the swimming pool into the press briefing room as we see today. In 1973, he added a bowling alley to the basement, which is a premier shot to get and have an opportunity to bowl at the White House. Yours truly has not done that yet. I can't wait for the invitation. I'm waiting for it in the mail. I'm just kidding. It would be a lot of fun to go and roll the bowling balls down in the basement alley there. Now, in 1975, President Gerald Ford installed an outdoor swimming pool on the South grounds, financed entirely by private donations. In 1993, President Bill Clinton undertook a restoration and refurbishment of the Executive Mansion. And in 2009, President Barack Obama resurfaced the South Grounds tennis court into the basketball court and added the White House kitchen garden on the South Lawn. Now, in 2020, President Trump and the First Lady completed a new White House tennis pavilion, refurbishing the White House tennis court and the grandchildren's garden, as well as constructing a new building. So now in 2025, President Trump carrying on this legacy of breaking ground for a new grand ballroom, a transformative addition that will significantly increase the White House's capacity to host major functions honoring world leaders, foreign nations, and other dignitaries. And the White House sharing countless different photos, which perhaps we could share and get up for you so you could see how that's happened. So the unhinged left has another talking point that's falling on false ears because there's no precedent for what they're arguing, especially the fact that who's funding this? It's all privately supported and funded. As you saw those people last week at the White House who were the very generous donors in all of this. But President Trump, he's inviting countless people. As you can see, there's some of the photos from Truth Social, President Trump showcasing what will take place with that grand ballroom in the coming weeks and months. As we think Perplexity, their new AI-powered web browser. You need this. I've been trying it. It's a lot of fun, actually. The Comet. Unlock 1 month free of Rumble Premium. Browse at the speed of thought with Comet. Get started at pplx.ai/RSBN. Now, imagine having a personal assistant literally living in your web browser. So you might spend, on average, an hour or two, maybe 3, searching, researching, getting stuff done, making reservations, managing all of that. Well, that can go out the window. Let Comet take care of it. What takes hours of work can turn into a mere matter of seconds. Now imagine this, you work on the East Coast as we do, but the business partners, they're out on the West Coast, and you have to meet next week for that upcoming AI conference, and you want to meet in Austin, Texas, get the best barbecue and Tex-Mex in town, let Comet search it for you. Book the reservations, send all of those meetings over to your business partner, and then you don't have to worry about doing 10 things at once. So peace of mind right there in an elite AI web power browser from Perplexity at pplx.ai/RSBN. Thank you for sponsoring us on the right side of history. And it's that time of year again. Someone comes home with a cold, a cough. You don't think it'll be much, and then all of a sudden the whole household is sick. So stock up that medicine cabinet. Get 10% off Tamiflu, ivermectin, antibiotics, and much, much more with code RSBN10. Scan that QR code there today. It's allfamilypharmacy.com/RSBN for life-saving medications. In fact, over 200 essential medications, including emergency medical kits that really in 2025, it's not a luxury, but a necessity to remain safe. You can also take these on vacation with you. Very easy to put in the carry-on, and they do not require insurance. So no red tape, no bureaucracy, just a pharmaceutical note. And they're doctors and pharmacists all ready to take care of you with any questions that you might have. Prepare for cold and flu season. It's allfamilypharmacy.com/RSBN, code RSBN10. Scan that QR code there. Also, Tax Network USA, tnusa.com/RSBN. Call today. Do not delay. It's 800-357-1415. Protect yourself from the IRS. Settle those back taxes now, whether it was April 15th, October 15th. You're delayed for whatever reason. These great patriots know a thing or two about assessments. They're accountants. Some have worked for the IRS, and they know how to help you through this, especially if you open a business for the first time. There could be so many problems that take place, and it might have thrown you off with your tax planning. Not a problem at all with Tax Network USA, tnusa.com/RSBN, as it is 9:41 on the East Coast, a very early 6:41 on the West Coast. We are happy to be joined by you. Welcome to our studios here in Auburn, Alabama, the loveliest village on the plains, as we get a live look of the press briefing room on Capitol Hill. We will see Speaker Mike Johnson and GOP leadership at the top of the hour. Day 22 of the government shutdown, the longest in modern American history. So we'll see any updates from leadership there, as Speaker Johnson, the unstoppable force against an immovable object of Senator Chuck Schumer, and the minority leader who has become ever increasingly more radical as a result of crazy Bernie Sanders moving the Democrat Party further and further and further left. This was once a person who ran for county executive in the Empire State of New York, and one of the first checks written to him was by a young businessman known as Donald Trump. So the history going back there a long time. Even the Al Smith dinner last year, President Trump stating that, man, I love this guy, Chuck Schumer, but he's gone off the rails with his far left commitments as of yet. And Chuck Schumer held his head down, if we can remember from the first term as well, when President Trump said, I will accept it. You can put it on me. I need a safe border. I'll do whatever it takes in order to negotiate that. And the Palestinian senator from New York has seemed to have lost the edge that's needed in negotiations. But we do know that the House leadership, as speaking to Congressman Barry Moore earlier this hour from Alabama, a United States Senate candidate, the House did their due diligence. It's now in the hands of the United States Senate, and that 60-vote threshold to keep traditions upheld in case there's ever a switch in the majority. God forbid there is, because we know that there's one party that does not care about the future of this nation. Billions and billions being wasted as a result of this Chuck Schumer shutdown. In addition, those who are on government assistance truly needing all of these subsidies, and President Trump, Secretary of War Pete Hegseth, finding that way to keep the government open in the meantime. So as those developments continue, President Trump yesterday celebrating Diwali at the White House, with cut number 3, Mr. Producer, speaking on the great relationship between the Indian people, Indian Americans, and the government half a world away. With Prime Minister Modi's leadership and President Trump's leadership, new dawns and new days in the partnership between the United States and India.
Let me also extend our warmest wishes to the people of India. I just spoke to your Prime Minister today. We had a great conversation. We talk about trade. We talk about a lot of things, but mostly the world of trade. He's very interested in that. Although we did talk a little while ago about let's have no wars with Pakistan. And I think the fact that trade was involved, I was able to talk about that. And we have no war with Pakistan and India, and that was a very, very good thing. But he's a great person, and he's become a great friend of mine over the years.
Continuing from the Oval Office, cut number 4, Mr. Producer, the Hamas video, all updates on what's taking place there, according to the president, as the vice president, J.D. Vance, visiting southern Israel to oversee what's happened thus far in the peace deal, but President Trump commenting directly from the Oval Office on this very peace plan.
The Hamas situation, where they're pretty violent people, I would say, that we could put that out in 2 minutes. We're giving them a chance. You know, they agreed that they'd be very good, very straight. They wouldn't be killing people, and they have killed people. That wasn't the deal we made, but if they don't honor the deal, they'll be taken care of very quickly, but I'd rather not have to do that. But we have total peace in the Middle East. We have levels of friendship with everybody, and every countries that hated each other now love each other.
All of this culminates in leadership that is truly extraordinary. President Trump and his congressional team, with House Speaker Mike Johnson, Senate Majority Leader John Thune, all working overtime for the American people. And hence the communications office of the White House really summing it up in a simple way with cut number 8. President Trump truly is a baller. And some of those images dating back to Texas when they had those hurricanes and the floods that went through, and the left went unhinged because he had quite a nice basketball form to throw out those paper towels to those needing them. But this president, regardless of the criticism, always there on the ground to help where he can with a full response of the federal government. Thank you to Monetary Gold. With wealth and preservation securities, it's your retirement and pensions, everything you worked hard for, whether it's generational wealth creation or buying that first or second property. Monetary Gold can assist with that. So call them today and grab your complimentary presidential gold guide to get that walkthrough of Mr. 45 and 47 right on the front cover. Presidential Gold Guide. Call today. Don't delay. Ask how you can eliminate those IRA fees permanently for the rest of your life. Don't let that hold you back from getting involved in this bull market of gold and silver. 888-617-7994. It's RSBN4thegold.com. RSBN4thegold.com. And why not prep with the Presidential Gold Guide as we lead to the Winter Olympics 2026 in the gorgeous country of Italy, and ultimately 2028 Los Angeles, California, playing host to the Summer Games. So get ahead on your own personal gold, as we see many of our athletes will be wearing that around their necks. But Robert Kiyosaki warning us 2 bank failures this year. So when paper money goes kapoof and inflation continues to provide a problem in the economy, we have a very weak dollar right now, even though you see costs going down at the pump, at the grocery store. Still a lot to handle on a global scale. Make sure that you diversify with gold and silver, with Monetary Gold, the best in the business, RSBN4thegold.com, and that will lead to having a better night's sleep, but an even better night's sleep will be provided by mypillow.com/RSBN. The 6-piece towel set back in stock. Normally $70, a big 70, going for under $40. $39.98, a very limited quantity. Call today. Do not delay. It's 800-836-7566. mypillow.com/RSBN. Support Mike Lindell and Right Side Broadcasting Network by shopping today. With over 2,000 different options, it's a good place to be at mypillow.com/RSBN. Thank you to Mike Lindell, the purveyor of free speech and defender of election integrity, and the master marketer, as President Trump puts it, providing you with this extraordinary towel set that will go fast. mypillow.com/RSBN. Thank you for being so supportive of us here at Right Side Broadcasting Network. From the bottom of our hearts, it's really a true pleasure as we are small but mighty, taking on legacy media and providing our voices in the sea of conversation happening. And that's a good thing, to have so many countless voices on really all sides. But ultimately, we're honored to be on the right side of history, the correct side of history, the common sense side of history. A decade of going to rallies and providing this unbridled access to your 45th and 47th president, your 50th vice president, the 119th Congress, and beyond. But now we've been your go-to live desk as well. We hope you love the format, the original programming. RSBnetwork.com/donate is the place you can go, or text RSBN to 801-801 to be prompted with online giving. There's also a check or money order address if you have a pen and paper. 1550 Opelika Road, Suite 6, that's Box 344, the loveliest village on the plains, Auburn, Alabama, 36830, 1550. Opelika Road, Suite 6, Box 344, Auburn, Alabama, 36830. Thank you, thank you, thank you for your donations as we continue to cover the American ethos and this golden era at 9:51 Eastern, 6:51 on the West Coast. I hope you have your cup of coffee. I have a very large one myself as I enjoy caffeine to rev up the day. And President Trump is in D.C. We'll see if anything happens this afternoon with the schedule. It's a bit closed off today, but we'll keep tabs on that as Speaker Johnson and GOP leadership will hold a press conference. Day 22 of the full government shutdown. At the top of the hour, we'll take a quick commercial break for sponsorships. You're watching Right Side Broadcasting Network, your go-to live desk. Don't you dare change that dial.
Welcome to Right Side Broadcasting Network, your trusted conservative news outlet. At RSBN, we deliver the truth when the mainstream media falls short. Since 2015, we've proudly broadcasted every single one of President Trump's iconic MAGA rallies, bringing you the excitement and energy live before anyone else. By watching RSBN, you get an unfiltered front row view of the action on the ground. We interview the crowds to give a voice to millions of Americans just like you. We show you President Trump's speeches in their entirety, free from interruptions and censorship. We cover the stories that matter to you with the integrity and passion you deserve. Thank you for choosing RSBN as your home for America First News. Together, we stand strong, united, and informed. So join us and be part of the right side of history.
Hey y'all, it's Silk from the Diamond and Silk Chit Chat live show. Look, don't forget to check me out right here on RSBN Network. Be sure to watch the show on Right Side Broadcasting Network, and I want you to support Right Side Broadcasting Network. Yes, it's imperative that you do so, okay? I look to see y'all soon. Bye-bye.
allfamilypharmacy.com/RSBN. You can scan that QR code now, RSBN10. That is the code, easy to remember, for 10% off. This is ivermectin, hydrochloroquine, antibiotics that will save you and yours from bacterial and viral infections, NAD+, and much, much more. 200 essential medications and emergency medical kits, the meds you trust delivered to your door. Welcome back to Right Side Broadcasting Network. We are awaiting Speaker Mike Johnson and GOP leadership to give a press conference on day 22 of the Chuck Schumer shutdown. In the meantime, media colleagues joining there in the press briefing room on Capitol Hill. a nice room there. It really is fantastic. There was a crash outside the White House, but a person is arrested after they crashed their vehicle into a security checkpoint outside of the White House. We're not sure on a motive yet, but watching that story as Warner Brothers is for sale. Warner Brothers is opening a sale after announcing that the company is being split into two parts, one for entertainment and another for news. That's actually really quite interesting to see that development happening. If you have a chance to be outside of Los Angeles, it's right to the north of the Hollywood sign. It is the coolest sound studio, sound set, and the history of Hollywood, the golden era, truly right there. So definitely take that tour if you happen to be out in Los Angeles and to see the sets and the reasons why some are bigger than others and how they did amazing studio shots from Inception to Waterworld and countless other movies to television and how that all came together. It's movie magic in real time. So be sure to visit Warner Brothers if you're out on the West Coast. The Louvre has reopened its doors after thieves stole $102 million in imperial jewels over the weekend. So you might have missed that. That was kind of a little known story that was out there. President Trump seeking a DOJ payment in the form of a payout as the president asked the Justice Department for compensation in connection with the Russia election tampering and the Mar-a-Lago investigations. That was unbelievable to think just a couple of years ago that had happened to then former President Donald Trump and the former First Lady. Such an invasion of privacy that took place there. Now, the Arizona Attorney General is suing Speaker Mike Johnson. You might have noticed or heard that in the last press conference. That might be addressed again in delaying, according to her, Representative-elect Adelita Gravila's swearing in, citing political motives, while Johnson claims there's a precedent there. And the speaker spoke on that yesterday. I'm sure he'll cover that again today. As tariffs and soybean imports becoming a huge topic of discussion, with China not importing any U.S. soybeans in September. This is marking a decrease from 1.7 million metric that was happening just in the year prior. 1.7 million metric tons, in fact, of soybeans. So that's been an issue, and perhaps leverage that the premier Xi Jinping might be trying to use against the United States, as President Trump has really laid down the letter of the law with all of these tariffs around the world really affecting China ultimately and their global dominance. Most recently, the new deal we saw early this week with Australia when it comes to minerals and rare earths, also an exchange in military supplies, specifically submarines in the Indo-Pacific. So it's a national security issue in the reshaping of the global economy. Also, the topic of conservatorships coming back up, that made famous by Britney Spears in her memoir, putting a new spotlight on this topic and why they are used and how they can be abused. You know, that her family was really hoarding over the money she had earned. And Senator Ted Cruz talking on this issue over the course of the last 2 years. So we'll watch that as Speaker Mike Johnson will hold a press conference in the coming moments. And we'll see if we can get any close up there, if my sneaky vision can see what's actually being written on the Republican side of checkpoints. I can't clearly make out what that says, but it's a lot of cutting, which is a good thing. Democrats know they want the government shut down, as we are 3 minutes away from the top of the hour. This 10 o'clock news conference scheduled with Speaker Mike Johnson and House Republican leadership. And thank you again to Congressman Barry Moore, candidate for United States Senate from the great state of Alabama, home to Right Side Broadcasting Network. A pleasure to talk to the gentleman to kick off the show this morning on what updates might happen here, as it is the unstoppable force against an immovable object. Yes, House Speaker Mike Johnson going toe-to-toe with Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer. Thank you to Kalshi.com/RSBN, where you can trade and bet on countless different topics in the American ethos. New York City's mayoral election, my goodness gracious, Tuesday, November 4th, it's coming up. Same with the Garden State of New Jersey gubernatorial election and the Commonwealth of Virginia as well. Some big elections leading into 2026. Will the Communist Democrat Zoran Mamdani be successful? It's a scary thing to think about in the global leader of what was once capitalism, New York City. It's scary to think what will happen to residents there if this radical is elected. What about the Democrat turned independent former governor of the Empire State, Andrew Cuomo, seeking to make a comeback tour? Someone who experienced lots of lawfare in his own right, but yet another person who was very wrong on the COVID lockdowns. Will he make the comeback? And Curtis Sliwa, the Republican nominee back-to-back, endorsed by America's mayor, Rudy Giuliani, all in this three-way race to replace Eric Adams as New York City's next chief executive. Will Bitcoin hit 150K before March? March Madness leading up to a Bitcoin spike and also those great college basketball teams. We know the World Series starting on Friday evening. The Los Angeles Dodgers taking on the Toronto Blue Jays. Will the Dodgers repeat and defend their championship from last year? All of those questions on sports, music, politics, culture, and much, much, much more. Kalshi.com/RSBN. And with this autumn season, gorgeous weather, the apple cider, the pumpkin, this, that, and the other, whether it's in the form of a big pumpkin and hay rides to the haunted houses, take the miracle that is angelpaste.com with you along for the ride, because the vitamin B original miracle cream, great to have during the more dry temperatures and the dry skin that come as a result. So I use this. Also the orange option, vitamin C infused, non-GMO, no chemicals. They are Christian based. They hire veterans. They're based out of Spring, Texas as well, the Lone Star State right off of the Gulf of America, newly renamed and bigger and better than ever. Angelpaste.com has several different options, so visit them today for your facial and skin care, overall skin health. It means a lot. So whether it's the first date, the 50th wedding anniversary, why not look your best and paint the town red with angelpaste.com. Thank you for sponsoring us on the right side of history. We're at 10 o'clock, and Speaker Johnson will hold a press conference right here for your viewing pleasure as we see the media colleagues all there ready in their seats to listen to any updates from House leadership. This is now day 22. Yes, day 22 of this government lockdown. Really an amazing thing to see, as this is perhaps the cleanest continuing resolution that we've seen since 1998. And with other lockdowns in the past, dating back to 1995 or even 2008, with the recession that we were in, those were all partial shutdowns. So this is truly an unprecedented moment for American history. And it's really sad. And this is the reason term limits are needed so badly in Congress. It's because Chuck Schumer, who has been in the House and the Senate since 1981, is worried about Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, a rising star in the far left, will primary her as a result. And as Congressman Moore put it on the show at the top of last hour, perhaps since they went to their No Kings protest, they'll get it out of their system a little bit, which is just the irony of all this, because you're not allowed to assemble necessarily in a monarchy. You're not allowed the right to free speech. You're not allowed to carry a weapon. You don't have the Bill of Rights as we do here in America under a king. Yet for some reason, paid agitators funded by far left sources and George Soros himself, again, it's not a Republican talking point, the paper trail has been made known. They gathered on Saturday to protest an alleged king, and President Trump had some fun with that, saying, thank you for taking down this king that was trying to overthrow my presidency. And you have to laugh, and you have to make jest and humor out of it, because it's just a ridiculous thing to look at. And as our friend Clay Travis mentioned, there really are two Americas right now. One that is single without children, not happy with their lives, going to a No Kings protest. And there's the other half that enjoy their Saturday with their family members, perhaps honored the Sabbath over the weekend, whether in the Jewish customs or even Christian customs on Saturday or Sunday, and then enjoyed some college and professional football, all while being surrounded by families. So what side of the aisle are you on? Feel free to share with us at feedback@rsbn.tv. Yes, feedback@rsbn.tv if you wish to opine, as we await Speaker Mike Johnson and GOP leadership to hold yet another press conference on what is truly the Democrat shutdown. Now, many times parties on both sides of the aisle, you could look through, especially since the year 2000, they can share in some of the blame over a shutdown, over not negotiating. I mean, I remember the temper tantrum of former Speaker John Boehner having with President Barack Obama, and back and forth it went of I have a pen, I have a phone, and then culminating in that bizarre video of them being buddy all along, apparently, trying to coax the president. Do you remember this? On his way out, it was the press dinner that they have, and the cigarettes and the wine. It was a ridiculous video. Let's go to House Speaker Mike Johnson and House Republican leadership.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to day 22 of the Democrat shutdown. While it's already been, as we noted yesterday, the longest full government shutdown in history, October 22nd marks another landmark. This is now the second longest government shutdown of any kind ever in the history of our country, and it's just shameful. Democrats keep making history, but they're doing it for all the wrong reasons. The contrast is the split screen, and I've referenced that at this podium a few times already, but I just think it's an important thing to point out, because that contrast between the two parties grows more glaring with each passing day, and you can look at all the evidence for yourself. There is, of course, a literal split screen every day. You've got Republicans and Democrats out all over the airwaves, burning them up, speaking directly to the American people, but you'll note that there's a key difference between the messages of the two sides. The Republicans are all repeating the same simple truth, and that is why that message is resonating with the American people, and that's what the polling indicates. At the same time, on the other side, the Democrats are doing their very best to obscure and create distractions from that simple truth. So the reason that we find it important to come out here every day and repeat again the same simple truth is because they're trying so hard to cover that up. But there's also a figurative split screen. There's a literal one, but it's figurative as well. And I just wanted to spend a moment this morning and talk with you about that. On one side, you have the Republican Party, the party that controls the White House, the Senate, and the House. We call that unified government. It's the party that won the popular vote in every single swing state and made deep inroads with voters new to the Republican base. And we received that mandate gratefully, and we went immediately to work. So since the election in November, just in the last 9.5 months of this Congress, which began in January, Republicans have delivered incredible results for the American people. And we could stand up here and spend an hour going through just the bullet points and highlights of all that, but we put a few on the handy chart over here. But just think of what's been accomplished in the last 9.5 months. A couple of things listed here. We passed the historic Working Families Tax Cut, one of the most landmark pieces of legislation ever passed by the U.S. Congress for the benefit of the American people. We slashed taxes for hardworking Americans, geared for the lower and middle class earners who needed that assistance. We cut hundreds of billions of dollars in fraud, waste, and abuse from government. We solved the border crisis. We are working now to solve the crime crisis in major cities around America. We strengthened Medicaid. We improved health care access, and we lowered premiums with our legislation. We have restored peace through strength, thanks be to God, and we are ending wars around the globe. And we've restored common sense to a government that sorely needed it. That's part of the mandate that was given to us by the American people in the fall. And most recently, we did our jobs, and we passed a clean, nonpartisan CR to keep the government open for the people. Now look on the other side of that figurative split screen as demonstrated here. The lights are out. It's all dark. Why? Because what the Democrats have accomplished in 9.5 months is a government shutdown. couple other things sort of related to that. You know, they have made a lot of TikTok videos. We give them credit for that. They've also assaulted law enforcement officers. One of them's on trial for that. They've openly embraced and rallied with communists and socialists, most recently across the country on Saturday. They voted to raise taxes on millions of hardworking Americans at the worst possible time. They have voted against reducing fraud, waste, and abuse in government, and they have now voted collectively, Democrats in Congress have voted 12 times to keep the government closed down. But it doesn't stop there. The Democrat shutdown is a glaring example of just how far the Democratic Party has strayed from common sense. Remember the simple truth here. It was over a month ago now that we passed, the Republicans passed the clean, short-term, continuing resolution. It's nonpartisan. No gimmicks, no tricks, no riders, no partisan Republican policy priorities added to that. It's 24 pages in length, as we've discussed so many times, and it is very, very simple. Why? Because it was a very simple good faith effort on our part to preserve our ability to keep negotiating on the full year funding bills and, of course, the other big issues facing the American people. So we wanted to keep the lights on. But what did the Democrats do? Instead of receiving that, voting for it as they have always done in the past, they broke from history and they rejected that. And they offered a counterproposal. Ours was a clean CR. We call theirs a dirty CR, and you all know why. Because they added $1.5 trillion in new spending that would be a mandate, including hundreds of billions of taxpayer dollars for health care for illegal aliens. Go to page 57, section 2141 of what they filed. They want to restore funding for left-wing pet projects in foreign countries. And I've given you a list of some of the crazy things that they would include in that. $500 million for liberal news outlets like NPR and PBS on the backs of taxpayers, and the removal. Remember, they wanted to eliminate the $50 billion that Republicans got signed into law by President Trump on July 4th to prop up our rural hospitals. And here's the kicker. The Democrats can't even agree on what they want right now. If you polled congressional Democrats on what it would take to reopen the government, you would not get a uniform answer. Every reporter in the room, by the way, should be asking them that question. Democrats put together this haphazard grab bag of crazy leftist policy proposals when they knew that it would not be agreed upon, and they knew that it was clear that Republicans were working to do the responsible thing and offer a clean CR to fund the government. That's our most basic job here. In their desperation now, they're trying their very best to somehow blame Republicans for the forthcoming health care crisis that they themselves created, by way of just very quick review, for the record, because they're trying to obscure this as well. Let's remember the true origins of the boondoggle that is American health care under Obamacare. Democrats wrote that bill. They passed it into law without a single Republican vote. During the COVID pandemic, Democrats created temporary Obamacare credits, again, without a single Republican vote. Democrats then voted to extend those credits. They set the expiration date on it. And then when they held the majority in the Senate, it was Democrats who chose not to extend those credits beyond this year. Now, as we approach their own self-imposed expiration date, now they are breathlessly insisting to you, and on all the interviews, that somehow it's a Republican crisis. Give me a break. The facts are the facts. We are up here sharing the simple facts and truth. And as John Adams said, facts are stubborn things. Democrats are the ones who manufactured this entire situation without a single Republican vote, and now, when the chickens are coming back home to roost, they're trying to blame the other team. It is utter nonsense, and you should call them on it. That's the job of the press, and continue to do that every single time. Clearly, this is a complicated issue, this whole healthcare subsidy thing, and there's hundreds of different views on it, as I've explained. So Republicans cannot and will not solve it in a backroom deal. Chuck Schumer has been suggesting that 4 leaders should go into a smoke-filled back room like they used to do in the old days and create this solution. It's not a possible thing to do. It was never appropriate. It's not possible to put on a continuing resolution because it's such a complex issue. Issues of this magnitude deserve deep thought and deliberation. That's how this system works here. And as soon as Chuck Schumer reopens the government, all of our members will have an opportunity to engage in the very important discussion of how to make Obamacare affordable. But we won't engage in Democrats' hostage-taking, nor will we pay a ransom. We certainly won't engage in their unserious proposals as long as Democrats continue to act like unserious lawmakers. I'm just going to say this morning, enough is enough. With us today with the leadership team are two leaders in Congress. One is Chairman Bruce Westerman of the Committee on Natural Resources. And we also have with us Congressman Mike Simpson, who's our lead appropriator for the Department of the Interior, which funds and oversees our beautiful national parks. Both are here today to share an update on how this shutdown impacts all those operations. But I will note, as I bring Chairman Westerman up first, that when President Obama shut down the national parks and the National Mall in 2013, it was a real hardship for the American people. And the Trump administration is trying to handle this differently. They've gone to great lengths as much as they can to protect Americans' access to our national parks, while Democrats continue to hold government funding hostage. They'll have more to share on that, the experts on the subject, and I'm happy to bring them up now. Thank both these gentlemen for their hard work. I'll turn it over to Chairman Westerman. Yeah, bud.
Thank you, Speaker, and good morning, everyone. First off, I want to say thank you to the thousands of federal employees across the country that are still in the field, going to work every day, oftentimes without pay, to do their jobs to steward and protect our public lands, from Park Service to Forest Service Rangers to Fish and Wildlife officers and all the other management and support staff doing their jobs in uncertain times. Thank you. Leadership starts at the top, and I commend President Trump, Secretary Burgum, and Secretary Rollins for the job that they've done and for their leadership in keeping our public lands open to the public. It's not always been that way during shutdowns, as the Speaker mentioned. But this can't continue indefinitely. Despite all the extraordinary efforts being made, at some point, without funding, the public lands will not be accessible to the public. The longer this unnecessary shutdown lasts, the more negative consequences that we'll start to see. Without regular staffing, litter will pile up and park ecosystems will be affected. It's fall time. It's a wonderful time of the year. It's a wonderful time to visit our public lands with crisp weather and beautiful foliage. Fall, personally, is my favorite time of the year, and it's that way for many Americans who enjoy being outdoors. When Americans save up to visit a national park or a national forest, that experience should exceed their expectations. Families visiting our parks are now being met with disappointment as visitor services and experiences are reduced. As the shutdown drags on, families will cancel their vacations or day trips to our public lands. It's hunting season all across the country, different types of hunting seasons across the country, and public lands are oftentimes the only place that people who like to hunt and fish have to recreate. For everyone's sake, and who uses and appreciates our public lands and appreciates our public employees, it's time to end the shutdown. As we look here in Washington, the negative effects of the shutdown and what that will have on public lands, I just want to highlight one issue, and that's the Great American Outdoors Act. This was a bipartisan bill that was signed into law by President Trump during his first term. It's something that there's a lot of bipartisan support to work on right now. But, tomorrow we had planned a field hearing on the Great American Outdoors Act so that we could reauthorize this piece of legislation that's putting as much as $1.9 billion a year into maintenance backlog on our federal lands. I've had an opportunity to visit many of these parks and to see the wonderful work that's being done. It's something that Republicans, Democrats, and independents, I think, all appreciate, the fact that we're taking care of our public lands. But Congress is not here working on those issues because of the shutdown. And we need to get back to work. We need to start putting the American people first and putting these federal lands and giving them the place and the position that they deserve. And we simply can't do that when the government is shut down. So enough of the shutdown. Let's get it over, get people where they're paid, where they're going out and doing their jobs that they want to do, and getting America back in the position we need to be in and getting Congress back and functioning. And with that, I'll turn it over to my friend Mike Simpson from the Appropriations Committee.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, and thanks to the leadership for inviting Chairman Westerman and I here to talk a little bit about the impact that this shutdown is having on our public lands and our national parks. I couldn't agree more with House leadership, their position on this shutdown. House Republicans, as you are well aware, did not shut the government down. We voted to open the government and not shut it down. It's the House Democrats that and the Senate Democrats that are voting to shut the government down and keep it shut. We gave them exactly what they wanted. We gave them a clean CR, no gimmicks, no policy writers, short term. There were people who wanted this to go on until January or February. They wanted a short term. That's exactly what they got. And then surprisingly, they reversed themselves and voted against it. This shutdown is causing and potentially causing even more damage for the American people. While the Democrats in their press conferences say how much they care about the American people, that they're fighting for the American people, when you look at the impacts of what they're doing, clearly the evidence is the reverse of that. They don't really care about the American people. What they care about is keeping their leadership positions, and that's exactly what's happening. They say that they care about federal employees. The fact that we have furloughed federal employees that aren't getting paid, clearly the evidence shows that they don't really care about federal employees. This is about two leaders trying to keep their jobs, and that's unfortunate. You know, our national parks are our historic treasures. Ken Burns called them America's best idea. The Park Service goes to great lengths to protect our resources, and the Park Police provide critical safety measures for our visitors in our national parks. Under the Democrats' shutdown, the lack of funding for staff and maintenance projects could cause irreparable damage to these national parks. Some people say, well, it's the end of the year. Most of the national parks are visited during the summer. Last year, we had 331 million people visit our national parks. They are truly America's best idea, in my view. In October of last year, we had 28 million people visit our national parks. 28 million in just October. I agree with Chairman Westerman. I think it's the best time of year to visit our national parks, with the colors changing, warm days, cool nights, all that kind of stuff. I love Yellowstone in October, and actually in November when you get there and you see the first snowfall and a few things like that. It's a great time to visit our national parks. But we have families who have been planning to visit our national parks for years sometimes, putting aside the resources, that are now canceling their visit to our national parks because of this shutdown and the impact that it could potentially have on their vacations. Unfortunately, that's very damaging. We know many people who are canceling their trips. But this administration is trying to keep the national parks open. Unlike the Obama administration when there was a shutdown, they actually put tape around the open air monument, the World War II monument, so that people that came in, veterans that came in to see it, couldn't visit the open air monument. They tried to make it as painful as possible. This administration is trying to do just the reverse. They're trying to keep the parks open. They're trying to keep our public lands open and trying to make it as least painful as possible. But it's going to get more and more painful as time goes on. I applaud this administration for their efforts to mitigate the impacts that this is going to have on our national parks. As I said, 28 million Americans visited our national parks in October, 24 million in November. So they were used all year long, whether it's just the great parks out in the west, Yellowstone and Glacier and Yosemite and Grand Canyon, or whether it's the Everglades in Florida or Arcadia in Maine. These national parks are a treasure to America, and our Americans love them. There's one other thing I would like to say. You've all heard us as appropriators, and actually as all Republicans have said, we need to get back to regular order. You all know what that means. What it means for those listening is that we pass bills, individual bills, we bring them to the floor, we go through the amendment process, we go to conference, and then we bring a conference report back between us and the Senate. This leadership team, we haven't done that for about 15 to 20 years. This leadership team that you see behind me has moved us in that direction more than any team I've seen ever. We are actually ready to go to conference with 3 bills right now that have passed the House. The Speaker plans on bringing, and the Majority Leader plan on bringing up the rest of the appropriation bills and trying to get back to regular order. You can't do that overnight. It takes some time. But they have moved us in that direction, and we will get back to doing it the way that it should be done, where we do individual bills, we conference them with the Senate, we bring them back to pass them. So I applaud this leadership team and the efforts that they're making, but we can't do it while the government is shut down. We need to open this government back up. And yes, there are many other issues that need to be debated and worked on. We can't work on those. As Westerman said, Chairman Westerman, can't have hearings and that type of stuff when we're shut down. So we need to change that. We need to open this government back up, get rid of this stupid Schumer shutdown, the 3 S's, I guess, and let us do our job. That's why we're here. I get a kick out of listening to the press conference from some of my senators saying, well, the House has been on vacation for a month. This is not what I call a vacation. If they think showing up once a day and casting one vote is work, they need to come over to the House side and see what we're doing. We're working with our constituents, we're out talking to people, and we're back in Washington doing our job too. So we'll continue to do our job, end this stupid Schumer shutdown, and let us do our job. And now I'd turn it over to the great Majority Leader of the House, Steve Scalise. Thanks.
Thank you, Chairman Simpson. Preach it. Appreciate as well Chairman Westerman and the work that these great chairmen continue to do to try to keep government functioning as best as possible in the midst of very difficult circumstances that Democrats themselves created. I do think it's important, as we're at this point, that we look back over the last 9 months and really look at the difference between the two parties in Washington. And Speaker Johnson laid a lot of this out. You can see the poster. But just think about what happens every day here. Republicans wake up every day working with President Trump to try to get this country moving forward, to address and fix problems that, frankly, were created by Democrats. And what does the Democrat Party do every single day? Every day they wake up and just see what President Trump is doing and find a way to oppose it. Doesn't matter what he wants to do. President Trump came into office day one, said he's going to secure America's border, was actually elected on it overwhelmingly. 80% of the American people agreed with President Trump and House and Senate Republicans who said that should be a priority. And we actually set course to do that. And we have done just that, secured America's border. And what did Democrats do every step of the way? They said no. They voted no to secure the border. President Trump said, we're going to try to get our economy back on track. We're going to stabilize the tax code so that no American family has a tax increase. Every American family was facing, on most cases, a 30+% tax increase. President Trump said no family deserves that. Let's stabilize the tax code and have no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, so blue-collar workers can actually have more money in their pockets and empower them to do more for their families. President Trump said that. We agreed. What did every Democrat in Washington say? No. They didn't just say no. They all voted no to that. President Trump said we ought to produce more energy in America. Chairman Westerman was at the heart of a lot of those policies. You actually had to change policy to do it. So Congress and President Trump worked together to lower prices at the pump. Every American family today is benefiting from those great policies because they're paying less when they fill up their car every single day. And you would think, gee whiz, that would be a good area where all people in Washington, Republicans and Democrats, come together. But because President Trump said yes, what did every Democrat say? No. Every Democrat voted no to lower your energy costs just because President Trump said he was going to do it. President Trump also said, I'm going to do something that no president in decades had done, and that is modernize our air traffic control system. It seemed like at least once a month at some airport in America, big, medium, small, there was a near miss where an airplane almost ran into another airplane. In some cases, did tap or run into another airplane. And it was happening because our air traffic control system is still based on 1980s technology. I was actually a student of computer science and learned how to program computers in the 1980s when we had floppy drive disks. You have to Google what that is today because we don't even have them anymore, except where? At all of our major Airports across America, LaGuardia, running on floppy disks from the 1980s. And President Trump said, we ought to do something about that. We ought to fix it. How about we modernize our air traffic control system? Now, this isn't a new idea. You would say, well, gee whiz, why wasn't that done in the 90s, in the 2000s? For goodness sake, the computing technology on this iPhone is more modern and capability and competently technologically advanced than what a lot of our air traffic control systems are using, except it cost money. It cost billions of dollars. And so previous presidents, Republican and Democrat alike, just didn't have the time or the priority to find the money to go modernize that system. And so some days flights across America would get canceled. It was happening over and over again, at least once a month, anywhere in America, disrupting the lives of American families who just kind of figured, I guess that's just the way it is because government's in charge. Well, Donald Trump said, all right, we're going to change things because that's what Donald Trump does. He finds a problem and he works to fix them. And again, you would think everybody would come together and say yes, except because Donald Trump said it, every Democrat had to say no. And in fact, when we put it in the bill, every Democrat voted no against modernizing our air traffic control system, just because it was Donald Trump's idea. This is a sick and twisted and lost, rudderless ship of a political party. That's who we're dealing with. When the press asks, gee whiz, is there something else you can offer these folks in a negotiation to try to get this off a ramp and find a better way to get the government open? The speaker's told you over and over again, there's something we can negotiate with, but when the party is so rudderless and morally bankrupt that just because President Trump has an idea, the Democrat Party's visceral reaction is just to say no. Right now, he's actually renovating the White House, building a new ballroom. I mean, anybody that's ever been to a state dinner, like the White House has been renovated over and over again. There wouldn't be an Oval Office if there weren't renovations by previous presidents. The West Wing was a renovation by previous presidents to make it better for all future presidents. And that's what Donald Trump is doing. He won't enjoy most of the time of that, but future presidents will, because in the future, when you have a state dinner, when we bring world leaders in, which we do all the time, and you host a president of a foreign country, a prime minister. I've been to some of those. Some of you have covered them. Where do you go? You walk outside of the White House in the rain sometimes to go to a tent, to host a world leader. That's what we do today. And President Trump said that's a disgrace. How about we do better? And not only did he say we were going to build a great ballroom that we can host these events, he funded it privately. He put up some of his own money. And you would think, well, gee whiz, at least they can agree to that. It's not even taxpayer money. It's going to be a permanent renovation that'll enhance the White House for all future presidents. What does every Democrat say? They say no to that. They say no to everything he does because they just are angry about the results of the election from last year. They're upset with the American people because the American people said we want somebody who's going to wake up every day and say, how can I solve Middle East peace? I'm not going to take no for an answer. I'm not going to take the old failed ways of doing it for an answer. I'm going to figure out a way to go do it, and he does. How do I work to help improve the lives of Americans? He goes and finds a way to say yes, and because he says yes, Democrats find a way to say no. It's a disgrace. It's a disgrace, but now it's having real impacts on American families. With this shutdown, it's not just their everyday feud with Donald Trump. It's become now a problem where American families are paying the price. Let's talk about what just came out a couple of days ago. The USDA sent a letter to all of the states saying, quote, if the current lapse in appropriations continues, there will be insufficient funds to pay full November SNAP benefits for approximately 42 million individuals across the nation. 42 million people across America are going to suffer from those SNAP benefits that they count on right before Thanksgiving because Chuck Schumer and Democrats are so angry with President Trump that they just want to find a way to say no. And when they say no, now they're saying no to 42 million families who will go without food so that Democrats can show their far left radical base that they're fighting President Trump. As if they've got to show off to some radicals who come march on the mall and hold up effigies to murder the president, 8647. You saw the signs. Over 800,000 people in my home state of Louisiana get food benefits through the SNAP program. Yesterday we talked about Senator Ossoff, who one Senate aide said on the record to The Hill in that article, said that he's more afraid of if he votes to open the government, he will lose the clicks he's getting from foreign states and the small donor donations that add to about $3 million. That's what he's afraid of. Well, let's look at Senator Ossoff's state of Georgia. 1.4 million people are going to face losing SNAP benefits just in his home state. Now, does he want each of them to send about $2 each to him to make up for the $3 million he's getting from California, in Illinois, in New York, in Minnesota? Is that what it's going to take? Because he's causing pain on people in his home state by voting no. Maybe he needs to go on vacation instead of showing up every day, as Senator Simpson said, showing up to vote no to inflict pain on 1.4 million people in the state of Georgia. That's what he's doing. So this is having real impacts on real families. We're here working, and the House has passed the bill, despite 99% of Democrats voting no. Again, President Trump said yes. They say no, doesn't matter what the issue is. And the American people are sick and tired of it because now it's affecting them. Over 40 million low-income Americans are the ones who qualify for SNAP benefits. They're going to be denied food starting in November, according to USDA, because these guys just want to show their far-left radical base that they hate President Trump. It's disgusting, and it's having a devastating impact on millions and millions of Americans across the country. Our whip, Tom Emmer.
Well, Democrats have voted 12 times to shut the government down. 12 times. And now they're refusing to support legislation that would help alleviate some of the pain they've inflicted on the American people as a result. Earlier this week, the minority leader in the House said he opposes legislation that would pay our troops and essential federal workers during the Democrat shutdown. This includes Border Patrol agents, air traffic controllers, TSA agents, and more. All of whom, by the way, as these speakers have pointed out, are showing up to work without receiving a paycheck while the Democrats play their shutdown games. Some would say the soon-to-be former House Democrat leader went so far as to call this legislation, quote, a political ploy. Well, I'll tell you what a political ploy is. Holding the American people hostage just so you can avoid getting the guillotine from your far left base. That's a political ploy. The good news is this madness can end immediately if 5 Senate Democrats would grow a spine, stand up to the radicals in their party, and pass our clean CR and reopen the government. It contains no partisan policy riders, no gimmicks. In fact, it's the same spending levels that Democrats supported just 6 months ago and that you've heard repeatedly they passed 13 times under the Biden administration. We have made this plain and simple. We have made the process as plain and simple as possible. To our Senate Democrat colleagues, it's not too late to do the right and reasonable thing. Pass our CR and reopen the government for the people that you are actually elected to serve. Let's get it done today. With that, Lisa McClain.
Thank you, and good morning, everybody. And I think the leader said it best. I think you're right. President Trump could have the cure for cancer, and the Democrats would vote no because it came from President Trump. We have to start looking at the policies, and I think right here explains everything. I mean, Democrats have been playing political theater for 3 weeks with Republicans continuing to work and deliver some results. And here are, again, some examples, some facts. right? Just a few days ago, Congressman Ryan McKenzie visited a Head Start program that relies on federal funding and delivered food to TSA agents. Congressman Mark Alford visited multiple rural hospitals and healthcare centers. And Congressman Jeff Crank met with credit unions to ask for flexibility with federal employees who are actually missing paychecks. Real families are paying the price for the Democrats' shutdown. And what are the Democrats leveraging the shutdown to get? Ask yourself, what is their leverage? More wasteful spending? While Republicans are working at home, Democrats are fighting for weird programs, like halfway across the world, right? Think about it. Just think about it for a minute. They're sacrificing Head Start right down your street to produce Iraq Sesame Street. So they'd rather spend money on Iraqi Sesame Street than fund your Head Start programs. But President Trump is, the bad guy for putting America first. Scratch your head on that one. They're risking the safety of American skies for LGBTQI programs in the Balkans, right? Putting the Balkans over the safety of our skies. They're jeopardizing millions of paychecks to Americans to support woke programs in Honduras, Zimbabwe, Mexico, Venezuela, and Lebanon. Okay. I don't know about you, but I think that is absolutely shameful. Let me be clear. A shutdown should never be used as leverage for more wasteful spending, and especially when that spending isn't here on American soil. But that's what Schumer's dirty deal is doing. You heard me talking about it the other day, and you heard our speaker talk about it, the split screen, clean CR to work for the American people, Schumer's dirty deal CR to work for everybody but the American people. Wasteful spending at the expense of American people is not what this shutdown is about. But I want to let the American people know Republicans will not cave to Schumer's dirty deal. We will not cave to their wasteful spending. We will hold the line, and we will. I promise you, we will continue to work for the men and women and families who serve, protect, and build our great nation. Thank you.
Questions? Chad, go ahead. Yes, sir.
Can you characterize some of the dissonance inside your conference about the strategies that Republicans have? There was some criticism on the call yesterday saying that this shutdown strategy is old and Republicans need to have new tactics.
That was the word that was used. There was one member of the Republican conference. These are supposed to be, confidential off-the-record calls among colleagues, but some of you guys listen in, and I make a pleading at the beginning of every call that you wouldn't do that and wouldn't characterize it, but whoever the leak did, whatever. Beth Van Dyne was quoted. Beth is a dear friend. We've had lots of conversations about this. She was not complaining. It was not dissonance, Chad. She was pointing out that we have a lot of important work to do before the end of the year, and it was a very pleasant, constructive comment about strategy. You all have heard me say from the podium a few times, we're not pursuing a political strategy here. We're not. We're just simply trying to get the government open, and that's why the nonpartisan clean CR was the obvious vehicle to do that. And so we're not making political calculations here. We're making calculations on behalf of the American people. How can we get the government operating as soon as possible so they can get all these vital services and paychecks restored? And that's what this is about. So, if you called each individual House Republican right now, we're almost 100%, probably 99.8%, okay, of every House Republican understands exactly why we're in the situation we're in. Are we all anxious to get back to work here for regular legislative session? Absolutely.
She wanted the House to come back in the session.
No, that's not what she said. If you had listened in directly on the phone, you would know. You can ask her about it. No, she said the message. She said the message is feeling old, and I said, you know what, Beth, you're right, because we come out here and say the same thing over and over every day. But there is a method to that madness, because as I explained in my comments here, we have to repeat the simple truth over and over. Why? Because the Democrats are in an all-out assault on the truth. They're trying to obscure and distract, and you see all the different shiny objects they're trying to make everyone look at every day. I will tell you that the best evidence I have for you this morning, so that you know that the Democrats caused this shutdown, is because if the Republicans were responsible for this shutdown, that would lead the news in every mainstream media outlet every single night. It would be top fold of every newspaper on the front page every single day. Some of the mainstream media outlets aren't even covering it right now. Why? Because they're trying to give cover to the Democrats who have caused this. I mean, look, everybody knows the facts. The American people are not stupid. And we're in here every day appealing to their common sense and relaying the facts. And thankfully, those facts are saturating. Yeah.
I do want to point out that the shutdown's led to today's show for about the last 2
Oh, good. Thank you for that. Okay. Thank you, Today Show. Thank you.
Make sure you put about that.
Thank you.
Secondarily, some of your Republican colleagues have raised concerns about the Trump administration opening up the market to Argentinian beef farmers, saying that it could prioritize them over American beef farmers. What do you say to your Republican colleagues about that move by the administration, and what are you doing as a Republican Congress to help American farmers, beef farmers in particular?
Well, we're doing a lot of work. We had some discussion on that yesterday, and I don't know the latest developments, but I can tell you there have been some over the last 24 hours. Harriet Hageman is one of the members of Congress from Wyoming, and she has lots of cattle ranchers and was articulating some of their thoughts and ideas, and she was connected to USTR and to the White House, and they're having those thoughtful discussions. The White House doesn't want any unintended consequences. What they're trying to do is improve the lives of everyday Americans, make our economy work again, and make sure that we are treated fairly by trading partners around the world. And there's lots of complications and a lot of moving parts when you're talking about trade agreements, renegotiating old trade agreements between, over 100 nations all at once. But they've done an extraordinary job, and they're working to fine-tune all those details, and you'd have to direct specific questions about it to the White House, because I don't really know. Yes, ma'am. No, I'm not sure that's what he said. I mean, he and I visited yesterday for about an hour, and Leader Thune and I are 100% aligned on all of this, as we are with the president. In fact, Leader Thune and I spent some time with the president on the phone yesterday about all this, and I was with the president in the White House the night before for a couple of hours. What we're talking about is that obviously the calendar is being eaten up by all this political nonsense by the Democrats. And I used the word, it's getting a little dicey in here yesterday. Some of you quoted, Chad quoted me, I saw it this morning. I don't know how else to describe it. Look, we're running out of time to do very important, necessary things. And as Mike Simpson, Chairman Simpson pointed out here earlier, as one of the lead appropriators, chairman of one of those subcommittees, he noted that the date of November 21 was decided upon by the experts in the field, the appropriators themselves, in a bipartisan agreement. They agreed they needed 7 more weeks. Some people, as Chairman Simpson noted, some people wanted the CR to go all the way into the middle of next year, and there was all sorts of varying opinions. But the Republicans and Democrats on the Appropriations Committee came together and agreed on that appropriate date. But it was calculated to allow enough time to finish the job. I think all of them, when they decided upon that date, were in good faith. And they said, and the Democrats said to us, please make it clean. Please don't add Republican priorities, because then we can get the job done. We did exactly that. We have been in good faith every single day on this, and they are eating up the clock. So we're getting closer to November. It is going to be more and more difficult with each passing hour to get all the appropriations done on time. We acknowledge that, but we have to decide this on a day-by-day basis.
Last question.
Yes, ma'am. Second row, right here. Yeah.
How comfortable are you with the president apparently seeking $230 million from the Department of Justice?
I don't know the details about that. I've just read it. I didn't talk with him about that. I know that he believes he's owed that reimbursement. What I heard yesterday was if he receives it, he was going to consider giving it to charity. I mean, he doesn't need those proceeds. But we're for the rule of law. We're for what is just and right. And it's just absurd that, I mean, as has been noted here several times this morning, they attack him for everything he does. It doesn't matter what it is. This whole dust-up about the White House, just by way of quick review, because I'm an amateur historian, you'll understand, the White House has been renovated many times over the years, you understand. I mean, it was built between 1792 and 1800, right? The British burned it down practically, and 1814, and then they rebuilt it in the early 1820s. And ever since, like, we've had many presidents renovate and add things to the White House. Teddy Roosevelt built the whole West Wing. Who was it? FDR, with Taft, I think, added the Oval Office. FDR made additions. I mean, Truman put ripped everything up to put a bowling alley in. FDR had added the swimming pool, I think. Barack Obama added a basketball court. President Trump's going to add the greatest improvement to the White House in the history of the building since it was originally constructed in 1800. The ballroom is going to be glorious. It's going to be used for everybody. And by the way, hey, Democrats, if you win the White House back, you get to use it too. This is for the American people, and he's using private funds to do it. How in the world could they oppose that? The only logical reason is because they have Trump derangement syndrome, and that's what explains a lot of this. Two things. They want to oppose the president, and Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries are scared that they're going to lose their jobs. We all know that. I've said it over and over. It is an objective fact, and you can see it themselves. I wish that you guys would chase them down and call them up and ask them what it is they're demanding. This madness in the counterproposal, what I told you about, is the offer still on the table? They can't even articulate what they want. You know why? Because this was never about a solution on health care or anything else. This was about a spectacle. It was about a political distraction, and it was so that they could show a fight to the Marxist left in the Democratic Party. Look at the split screen. I'll leave you with that. Thanks so much.
Yeah.
Yes, it does seem repetitive at times with Speaker Johnson and House GOP leadership because it's the same old story from the Democrat shutdown led by Chuck Schumer. But these gentlemen and ladies on the House side have done their due diligence. They have worked countless hours and with constituents to continue as many services as possible, especially for our military being paid, mostly thanks to President Trump and Secretary of War Pete Hegseth, in these dark days of government shutdown, full government shutdown, the second longest now in American history, the longest in the modern era. As we watch all of this in day 22 of the Chuck Schumer shutdown, soon, let not your hearts be troubled, NATO Secretary General will give remarks. We'll bring that to you roughly at 11:15. So please stay with us here at Right Side Broadcasting Network, your go-to live desk on this Wednesday, October 22nd, 2025. And can you believe, I've been going through the calendar last year on the days leading up to Election Day of November 5th, 2024. When you put constitutional Republican government back into a united front of making America great again. In turn, you now have 9 months of 8 wars solved, and perhaps that number 9 right on the cusp between Russia and Ukraine. But this time of year, as we were experiencing some of those sniffles last year, the weather changes, and so does cold and flu and COVID season come in. So allfamilypharmacy.com/RSBN wants to protect you where it matters most. Not a luxury anymore, but rather a commodity to have these Tamiflu, ivermectin, antibiotics, antivirals, 200 essential medications, including emergency medical kits at your medicine cabinet right there for you and for your family to protect you from what may be outside, whether it's at work or even the kids coming home from school and they get the sniffles and the whole house is sick. If you don't have insurance, for whatever reason, there's no worry there. It's no red tape, no bureaucracy, just a pharmaceutical note for this go-to online pharmacy that is a big believer in most favored nation status to the right to try, as President Trump and his team at HHS continue to take on big pharma and really make sure manufacturing of these pharmaceutical drugs are here in America, not China. It's only common sense. But this time of year can lead to long lines at urgent care, to pharmacies, also to your doctor's office. So use code RSBN10. RSBN10 for 10% off. Scan that QR code there now for some of your great options. including NAD+, methylene blue, amongst many others. 200 essential medications right there at allfamilypharmacy.com/RSBN. Thank you as well to Monetary Gold. It's wealth preservation. It is securities. Grab that complimentary presidential gold guide today. Call today. In fact, do not delay. Ask how you can eliminate your annual IRA fees permanently, and yes, for life. RSBN4thegold.com, 888-617-7994. Do not let bank failures and paper-thin money lead to inflation and then your nest egg going bye-bye. You want to protect what you've worked hard for, whether it's retirement to pensions to your current salary. And if you're trying to create generational wealth, why not get involved in this bull market of gold and silver to diversify? In fact, it comes into play if you're looking to secure that first or second home property. 888-617-7994. It's Monetary Gold, the best in the business for wealth and preservation securities. RSBN4thegold.com. Thank you for sponsoring us on the right side of history. As at 11:15, we'll hear from the NATO General Secretary. So stay tuned for that here on the right side of history. You just heard from Speaker Mike Johnson and House Republican leadership over the course of the last hour. And no further major breaking details regarding day 22 of the government lockdown, although the House side, the Republicans working overtime to get this government back on track. In fact, it's really an interesting PR play that the Democrats want a complete government shutdown, given the fact that this might not turn out very well for them. But we've seen that this is really just succumbing to a far-left radical base, as Chuck Schumer is truly afraid of a primary from Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez come 2028. As we await the NATO Secretary General for their remarks, let's take a quick commercial break for sponsorships. Stick with us here on the right side of history.
Welcome to Right Side Broadcasting Network, your trusted conservative news outlet. At RSBN, we deliver the truth when the mainstream media falls short. Since 2015, we've proudly broadcasted every single one of President Trump's iconic MAGA rallies, bringing you the excitement and energy live before anyone else. By watching RSBN, you get an unfiltered front row view of the action on the ground. We interview the crowds to give a voice to millions of Americans just like you. We show you President Trump's speeches in their entirety, free from interruptions and censorship. We cover the stories that matter to you with the integrity and passion you deserve. Thank you for choosing RSBN as your home for America First News. Together, we stand strong, united, and informed. So join us and be part of the right side of history.
Tired of being told no by your doctor, your pharmacy, or worse, your insurance company? You're not alone. Millions of Americans are waking up to a broken healthcare system. That's why more and more people are turning to All Family Pharmacy. We believe in medical freedom. We deliver the prescription and the medication, all from licensed U.S. doctors and pharmacists, from ivermectin and trusted antibiotics to maintenance medications, even NAD+, the revolutionary anti-aging supplement. Use code RSBN10 at checkout for 10% off your first order.
Every once in a while, something big happens, something that changes everything. And now, in a defining moment for crypto, Trump Media Group and Crypto.com are joining forces to acquire up to $6.4 billion of CRO, launching America's first ever CRO treasury, empowering the Kronos blockchain. This is more than a partnership. It's the future of finance built in America. For more, visit Crypto.com, where millions trade CRO every day.
Hey y'all, it's Silk from the Diamond and Silk Chit Chat live show. Look, don't forget to check me out right here on RSBN Network. Be sure to watch the show on Right Side Broadcasting Network, and I want you to support Right Side Broadcasting Network. Yes, it's imperative that you do so, okay? I look to see y'all soon. Bye-bye.
Welcome back to Right Side Broadcasting Network. We are awaiting Mark Rutte, the NATO Secretary General, to give remarks. The former Dutch Prime Minister who has worked hand in hand with President Trump and the Western world. and has said at many different occasions that President Trump is the reason why so many good things happening, not only in Europe, but also in NATO with amazing trade deals and also the efforts in the direction moving towards world peace. And President Trump winning that Nixon Distinction Award on the achievement of peace, just as the 37th president pursued that on countless occasions, the 45th and 47th president of the United States doing the same. And Tricia Nixon Cox, her husband as well, the daughter and son-in-law of President Nixon, awarding on behalf of their foundation to President Trump the Achievement for Peace Award just yesterday. So something that is not really known about per se, like having the same name of the Nobel Peace Prize, but still something very prestigious as this president pursues peace over the course of his tenure. And now we have an upcoming meeting. Budapest, Hungary is the location, but a time and a date to be determined between President Trump and President Putin of Russia to further discuss peace plans. We do know that last week, President Zelensky on Friday with President Trump at the White House discovering all this. And she showed up again, Hillary Clinton, stating that over social media that President Trump is supposedly, this is not his house, she said. It's your house, and he's destroying it. That's what Hillary Clinton said. And then one of my friends mentioned on Facebook, one, this is project is completely funded by private donors. Two, it's a well-known fact that you took taxpayer-funded furniture, art, and more than when you left in 2000, speaking of the Clintons. And three, and don't get me started on what your husband did in our house. Thank you, Logan Lawrence, for your comments there. And that's so true, as President Trump continues a proud presidential legacy of leaving their staple right there at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. In the latest instance of manufactured outrage, unhinged leftists and their fake news allies are clutching their pearls over President Donald Trump's visionary addition to the grand privately funded ballroom to be at the White House. That's why you might have seen some photos demolishing some areas of the East Wing to make way for this. In a bold, necessary addition that echoes the storied history of improvements at the White House. Renovations from commanders-in-chief to keep the executive residence as a beacon to American excellence for more than a century. U.S. presidents have been renovating and beautifying, expanding, modernizing the White House to uphold its legacy. Now, in 1902, President Teddy Roosevelt built the West Wing, replacing expansive greenhouses constructed during the Jefferson administration and establishing the modern-day executive office wing with a classically leaning design, along with a colonial garden and East Terrace, which eventually became the East Wing. In 1909, President William Howard Taft remodeled and expanded the West Wing, including construction of the very first Oval Office. In 1913, President Woodrow Wilson demolished the Colonial Garden, modernizing it with the Rose Garden. In 1927, President Calvin Coolidge oversaw the renovation of the upper floors and the attic of the White House. In 1929, President Herbert Hoover remodeled the West Wing, including reconstruction work in the basement level and remodeling the first floor. Even after a fire on Christmas Eve of that year, the West Wing was repaired and ultimately reopened in 1930. Now, 4 years later, President Franklin Delano Roosevelt overhauled the West Wing, adding that second floor, a larger basement, and a swimming pool, and relocating the Oval Office to its current location. In 1942, the president constructed the East Wing. His successor, President Harry S. Truman, in 1948, doing a complete overhaul, a total reconstruction of the White House's interior, expanding its foundation and footprint, preserving only its exterior walls. Something very important given the fact that there was mold at the time and structures were actually removed earlier in this term, which also had outrage. But the problem was the roots going into the systems there in the White House. These things had to be changed and pruned at times, and that's what's currently happening. And it's a beautiful thing to see that this president is committed to building and development, something he dominated his career with and expanded countless skylines in New York City to Chicago and around the world, including Las Vegas. It's probably the most beautiful building that's actually on the Strip, the Trump Hotel and Casino. So he knows a thing or two about these, and if you've been to Mar-a-Lago, the presidential ballroom, this will be somewhat similar to that, if not even more grand. And why would foreign heads of state have to go and stand in the mud outside off of the Rose Garden in tents? It's nice to have a place to meet to celebrate the grand nature of this constitutional republic. Thank you to covepure.com/RSBN. Get $200 off of covepure.com/RSBN. Their clear wave technology leading the entire reverse osmosis systems and the technology that's out there. JAMA Pediatrics putting together a study of scientists and doctors that found that students drinking from the tap water on a regular basis can actually lose 2 or more points of IQ. I mean, think about that. Even with COVID, with all the learning that was lost, why would we want to add to that? And remember Flint, Michigan, the lead pipes that led to poisoning. I mean, it can lead to brain cancer, to liver function damages, also stomach lining issues. Get all that nastiness out of the water and follow the lead of Secretary Kennedy, who's devoted his life to removing fluoride, pesticides, agricultural runoff from the water. Scan that QR code there now, covepure.com/RSBN. Join Utah and Florida putting through legislation to get rid of the chemicals in the water. And you can get ahead of it right now in a machine that's no bigger than your coffee machine on the kitchen counter. covepure.com/RSBN, $200 off. Scan that QR code there now. Thank you, Cove Pure, for sponsoring us on the right side of history. And our latest sponsor, Perplexity, the new AI-powered browser that unlocks 1 month free of Rumble Premium. Comet. Browse at the speed of thought with Comet, pplx.ai/RSBN. It's like having a personal assistant as your web browser. So forget the hours and the countless amount of time you waste online. How much time do you waste online? Of course, it's a rhetorical question, but we all know that we have to get more done with seemingly less time, although there's always 24 hours in the day. Why not turn 3 hours of research and booking and managing and changing schedules and reservations and this, that, and the other into seconds of that with Comet taking over those responsibilities for you? Browse at the speed of thought with Comet. Unlock 1 month free of Rumble Premium, a great streaming source where you can watch RSBN live. AI powered at the speed of thought with Comet. Thank you to Perplexity for all of that. pplx.ai/RSBN and Tax Network USA, tnusa.com/RSBN. Protect yourself from the IRS. Call today. Do not delay. It's 800-357-1415. Tax Network USA. Protect yourself from those that are trying to collect on those big government taxes. And these experts, these patriots, some of them having worked for the IRS at some point, many accountants, they know a thing or two about this. tnusa.com/RSBN. Whether you missed the April 15th deadline or even October 15th, do not fear, although it could be stressful. Maybe you started a business and you just forgot to get everything organized and settled. Not a problem with the Patriot experts at Tax Network USA, tnusa.com/RSBN, 800-357-1415 to get started. Thank you for sponsoring us on the right side of history. As we await Mark Rutte, the NATO Secretary General, to give remarks, and we have that there live now for your viewing pleasure. We look forward to that, as he's been a good partner of President Trump and a former Dutch prime minister in that role, so he knows a thing or two about being a chief executive of a sovereign state. But as we were going through, countless presidents in the last 100 years have been renovating the White House. It seems to be really an unhinged left talking point that, oh, he's destroying the White House somehow, while they fail to recognize that it's all being privately funded. In 1970, President Nixon converted the swimming pool into the press briefing room as we see it today. In 1973, he added the bowling alley to the basement. And in 1975, President Gerald Ford installed an outdoor swimming pool on the South grounds, financed entirely by private donations. In 1993, President Bill Clinton undertook a restoration and refurbishment of the executive mansion. In 2009, President Barack Obama resurfaced the South grounds tennis court into a basketball court and added the White House kitchen garden on the South lawn. In 2020, President Trump and the First Lady completed a new White House tennis pavilion, and that tennis court, gorgeous, mind you, the grandchildren's garden, as well as constructing a new building. And now in 2025, President Trump is carrying forward that grand legacy, breaking ground on the Grand Ballroom, a transformative addition that will significantly increase the White House's capacity to host major functions and ultimately to impress other nations, other dignitaries, and those silly congressmen on Capitol Hill, some that want to shut down the government. And as President Trump put it yesterday, food's good here at the White House, so it's worth having a celebration in the new Rose Garden Club. Countless dinners, then met with a luncheon just yesterday. In case we still have that, Mr. Producer, cut number 9, I believe, from the White House yesterday. President Trump speaking on the shutdown specifically in regards to what's happening next at the Rose Garden luncheon. I believe that was the very first luncheon yesterday after a slew of dinners with Senate leadership, specifically the Republicans, invited over just yesterday.
I want to just say from the beginning, our message has been very simple. We will not be extorted on this crazy plot of theirs. They've never done this before. Nobody has. You always vote for an extension. Chuck Schumer and the Senate Democrats need to vote for the clean, bipartisan CR and reopen our government.
And in case you missed it, cut number 1, Mr. Producer, before the NATO Secretary General gives remarks, Vice President J.D. Vance over in Israel overseeing the peace plan, and it's all going better than anticipated, according to the Vice President. We can replay that now if that's available.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's great to have you. Look, I think that we are 1 week into President Trump's historic peace plan in the Middle East, and things are going, frankly, better than I expected that they were. This is a very, very tough situation. You have two peoples, two enemies who have fought a very tough conflict against each other. You have a terrorist organization on one hand that murdered a lot of innocent people. You've got an Israeli army that was defending itself on the other that has learned a lot over the past couple of years. And then, of course, you have an innocent civilian population in Gaza that's caught in the middle. But we're here at the Civilian Military Cooperation Center, which we are announcing the opening of. You have Israelis and Americans working hand in hand to try to begin the plan to rebuild Gaza, to implement a long-term peace, and to actually ensure that you have security forces on the ground in Gaza, not composed of Americans, who can keep the peace over the long term. So we've got a lot of work left to do. This is going to take a very, very long time, but I think Steve Witkoff, Jared Kushner, and Admiral Cooper behind me have done an incredible job. I want to say just a couple of quick things, and then I want to turn it over to Steve Witkoff. Number one, the Israeli government has been remarkably helpful in this. I want to thank them, thank our Israeli partners, and all the folks particularly who are working hand in hand with their American friends here at the CMCC. And number two, I want to say that there is this weird attitude I've sensed in the American media and the Western media where there's almost this desire to root for failure, that every time something bad happens, that every time that there's an act of violence, there's this inclination to say, oh, this is the end of the ceasefire, this is the end of the peace plan. It's not the end. It is, in fact, exactly how this is going to have to happen when you have people who hate each other, who have been fighting against each other for a very long time. We are doing very well. We are in a very good place. We're going to have to keep working on it, but I think we have the team to do exactly that.
It's that time of year again, cold, flu, COVID. You don't want to get sick when you have a lot to get done, especially before the holidays as they move in very quickly here on this October 22nd, 2025. Allfamilypharmacy.com/RSBN, truly the go-to at 11:11 Eastern with Tamiflu, ivermectin, antibiotics, antivirals, and much, much more. Scan that QR code there now. RSBN 10, that's RSBN 10, 10% off. NAD plus, methylene blue, countless other essential medications, 200 in fact, there for you, and emergency medical kits from the medicine cabinet to taking them on the road with you to go see that fall foliage, the fall foliage that these Democrats want to shut down on you. But if it's outside, hey, it's God's green earth. You might as well enjoy it. And with allfamilypharmacy.com/RSBN, it guarantees that you don't have those sniffles along the way. If you don't have insurance, no problem. No red tape, no bureaucracy. Simply a pharmaceutical note needed. Doctors, pharmacists, nurses who are working overtime for you, who believe in most favored nation status and right to try, along with President Trump and his team at Health and Human Services. It's common sense to stock up on these life-saving medications, these generics that the big pharma industry sometimes wants to hide from you. So whether it's parasite cleanses with ivermectin to better sleep with NAD+, and fighting off various diseases with methylene blue, amongst countless others. Hydrochloroquine, which did a darn good job against viruses dating back to 5 years ago. Why not try it out today? allfamilypharmacy.com/RSBN, your best preparation against cold and flu and COVID season on this October 22nd, 2025. We are awaiting the NATO Secretary General and former Dutch Prime Minister Mark Rutte to give remarks and comments here stateside. So we look forward to what the gentleman secretary has to comment on. Someone who was really crucial in the negotiations with the European Union, the relation to the United States, and has had a really remarkable positive relationship with President Donald Trump. This all leading to the Trump-Turnberry visit this summer in Scotland, where really evened the scale of the world's two largest economies, being the United States and the European Union. $600 billion signed there with a 15% tariff threshold for the Europeans to enter into the American markets for various things, including poultry, dairy, meats that were once completely rejected by the European Union, given regulation standards, and hormones and chemicals used on farms that were allowed. So we know even with certain Republican governors, like Governor Brian Kemp recently, allowing for that Roundup and other chemicals to continue to be used on farmlands. It's not really a smart thing to do when it comes to the health of this nation. Secretary Kennedy has been very, very, very articulate on this very matter, but the federal government at least attempting to change all of that and doing a very positive job with that on a global level. Also $720 billion of a deal in regards to oil and natural gas production. So two separate large deals, the European Union and ultimately the United States, in regards to moving forward. That was back in the Trump-Turnberry visits over the summertime in Scotland when President Trump reopened that gorgeous course. And why does that matter, how the trade deals affect different things? Well, national security is on the forefront of minds with the European Union, especially NATO, given the Russian invasion of Ukraine and the back and forth on that, which will ultimately, God willing, lead to peace. We know that those first discussions happened back in the middle of August with President Trump and President Putin in Anchorage, Alaska. That following Monday, European leaders, including the NATO Secretary General, joining President Trump at the White House, and ultimately that leading to last Friday with Mr. Zelensky of the Ukraine and a phone call the day before with Mr. Putin of Russia. So the next thing on the docket, we're watching it very closely as these leaders discuss. They are not divulging in specific details in an abundance of national and international security, but President Trump will meet with President Putin in Budapest, Hungary at a time and date to be determined. But we know this is on the forefront of the minds, not only of the Russian and Ukrainian people, but especially of the NATO alliance. And Mark Rutte has discussed this on countless occasions with President Trump as we await the Secretary General to give remarks regarding this. Now, President Trump yesterday, in case you missed it, receiving the Nixon Achievement in Peace Award, and granted that by Tricia Nixon Cox, the daughter of the late 37th President of the United States, and her husband, Mr. Cox, at the White House yesterday. And cut number 7, Mr. Producer, if you have that video, we can roll that real quick beforehand. In addition to that prestigious award, cut number 10, Mr. Producer, the Nixon family pausing for a moment with President Trump to showcase the colonnade, the new and improved 45-second walk from the residence to the West Wing with the Wall of Fame and the presidents who are there. The greatest honor history can bestow is the title of Peacemaker. And that was in the first inaugural address of President Nixon in 1969. As we await NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte moments away from giving updated remarks on what's likely to be regarding Russia and Ukraine. And there we have that on the colonnade of the Wall of Fame. A special moment for the Nixon family, a special moment for President Trump, as he's mentioned that he thought the former president should have fought harder to stay in office. And sadly, history knows Nixon really only from the Watergate scandal. But if you look at his presidency, he's someone that sought peace. He was arguably perhaps one of our finest diplomats that the modern presidency has ever seen. One of the sharpest and smartest, for sure, but someone who had some personal competitive demons. There's no question about that. But if Watergate bothered you, I think Russia, that hoax is beyond anything that we've seen in the lawfare and the weaponization against a president of the United States or even against an opposition party. I mean, this is unlike anything we've ever seen, with a former FBI director who has now been indicted on 2 counts, pleading not guilty and trying to get these charges dropped. Of course, we're talking about Mr. James Seashell Comey, calling for the 86ing, the elimination of President Trump with the 8647 post. I mean, how bizarre is that? And whether you agree or disagree with the bureaucracy, the deep state, or whether someone's a Republican or a Democrat, we've clearly seen since the Trump era that it doesn't really matter in Washington, D.C., whether someone has a R or a D next to their name, but rather their associations and what their true motivations are. You have his successor, Christopher Wray, which President Trump said, I should have never appointed him to becoming FBI director, and the bizarre way he ran that department, and the fact that clearly it looks like he had hundreds of informants and FBI agents undercover at the January 6th protest. People who were trained to overthrow governments and create coups. And it's sad because it's a reflection on what's otherwise been an extraordinary agency of agents who have devoted their time, their treasure, their personal talents to protecting this country as top law enforcement agents. And 98% of that agency is extraordinary. Sadly, it was the top that was so rotted, but now under FBI Director Kash Patel, unprecedented arrests, the obtaining of illegal ammunition and firearms to counterfeit and illegal activity, gangs and foreign terrorist organizations that have been operating in this country under the auto pen. So you have all of that happening right now as they're doing mic checks and photo tests right now, as we await the NATO Secretary General to give remarks. But as President Trump stated on Truth Social just yesterday, how much better the FBI is and the clandestine services under Kash Patel and the Department of Justice under Attorney General Pam Bondi. And John Ratcliffe, someone who does not get enough praise as the head of the CIA. We do know that President Trump mentioning the other day CIA agents are involved in Venezuela. The military is around that country as Maduro, the drug trafficking communist dictator of that country, who was not duly elected, but rather a FA government in Venezuela, is really facing the full force and weight of the American government, as we've seen in now countless unclassified or declassified videos with narco-terrorists who have met their match against the United States Navy and Coast Guard and those who would seek to do harm with as much drugs and narco trafficking that could ultimately kill 125 million Americans. We saw that over the course of the sophomore year, the second year of the Biden administration, 120,000 Americans were poisoned by fentanyl. These aren't people who are drug addicts. These aren't people who took the wrong turn. On countless cases, it's kids who would take an Adderall from a friend because they wanted to focus more, either in high school or college, and little did they know that that was laced with fentanyl. It's a tragic thing to think about, as many people have had to live with that, as Ann Funder, among others, who have come on this network and talked about their loved ones who were lost to this fentanyl poisoning, something that was not handled by the last administration, with an open border that led to human trafficking and this drug trafficking, which is now coming to an end under the leadership of President Trump. And it's something that, to put into perspective, as Dr. Sebastian Gorka, who's working in the administration and someone who is often not given the praise he does deserve, a humble servant of this government and ultimately to God, someone who has lived an extraordinary life, stating to Heritage Foundation at one of their recent conferences that from the end of World War II, so the beginning of the Korean War, whether it be draft into the volunteer military that you saw with the Persian Gulf War, the Iraq War, Operation Enduring Freedom, all of those engagements by our military in the last 75 years led to the deaths of 108,000 service members, and our thoughts and prayers with their family members, the Gold Star families, who lay down their lives and their treasure to protect this nation. But in all that span of time, to lose that many people, then to lose 120,000 innocent civilians from the narco trafficking, it's terrible. And that's why President Trump and Secretary of State Marco Rubio, in a story that really has not been throughout the headlines, said no to Maduro. He was begging for some sort of rare earth minerals, different deals to happen between the United States and Venezuela, and they said flat out no. Until you stop with this narco trafficking and the killing of countless innocent people, we are simply not going to do any sort of trade deal. And this is good in turn because it once again, as I spoke on earlier in the broadcast, gets China and its influence out of South America. It's been working overtime, and China gained so much ground since COVID and ultimately under the Autopen administration and President Trump pushing Xi Jinping and his Communist Party to the back of the ropes. We'll continue to do so with the use of tariffs. As President Trump mentioned yesterday, tariffs lead to not only economic security, but also international security and domestic tranquility for this country. It was once thought that an open China would somehow bring peace and prosperity, but they don't operate the same way we do. They don't see things in the lens of just a couple years down the road. They have a 200-plus year plan of government dominance, not only over their people, but over the world. And with other nations, you look since World War II, how many have benefited as a result of freedom and peace and democracy. Think about Italy to Germany to Japan, the former Axis powers that were totalitarian governments and fascist in nature. They all understand freedom and peace and democracy, just like we enjoy here in the United States. I mean, slightly different, but good things happening all in those nations and all allies of the United States as a result of U.S. involvement in world affairs, and doing it in such a way where winning a war and then giving that sovereignty back over to those countries. So if you have a student in school right now and you hear some far-left professor talk about how bad America is, talk about the last 75 years in foreign policy. Yes, there were certain mistakes, like the Iraq War should never happen. But if you look back on, we have a fighting force willing to go in and provide freedom for people and then simply leave. It's remarkable. And there's been no president since that World War II era that has embodied the peace through strength mentality quite like Donald John Trump, with 8 wars being solved in nearly 9 months, and now number 9 right on the cusp with Russia and Ukraine. And as President Putin put it, someone we can't necessarily trust, but his lips to our ears, I would have never invaded the Ukraine if President Trump had been reelected in 2020. He fears him, he respects him, and America is back on top. Looks like there's a little bit more light going on in the hallway there. Camera's a little bit shaky today. Again, that's not our camera, that's the pool camera. As we await the NATO Secretary General to give remarks, I'm sure, on the Russia-Ukraine updates. but also world affairs. And the fact that the administration had somewhat of a course change with Tomahawk missiles being sold to the European Union through NATO instead of just being handed over as it once was under the Oil Penn administration, which continued the war 3.5 years in Russia and Ukraine. So let's go there live now and see what some of the comments are by the NATO Secretary General.
Well, thanks everybody for coming here. I especially want to thank the Secretary General and the Ambassador for being here, where we've been given an update on a number of things, including what I think are very promising developments in our cooperation among the NATO members for resupplying not only Ukraine, but modernizing the whole of NATO. I want to express my appreciation for my partner, my Democratic colleague, Jean Shaheen, for all the work that she's done over the years with the Senate NATO Observer Group, and yield to you for questions. Maybe give an update on legislative
That'd be great.
Activity as well.
Well, I will just echo the appreciation to have Mark Rutte, the Secretary General, and Ambassador Whitaker here to give us an update on what's happening with NATO in Europe. I reported to them that we're very excited that in the Senate Foreign Relations Committee this morning we passed out the first 3 bills that address Russia's unprovoked war in Ukraine today. One would declare Russia a state sponsor of terrorism because of their kidnapping of Ukrainian children. And the second would allow us to move forward using the repossessed assets from Russia to support Ukraine in this war, and the third would be to take an effort at China to stop the war effort, their support for the war effort from China. All of those bills passed unanimously out of committee, have strong bipartisan support, and we look forward to getting them to the floor soon so that we can join the Europeans as they look at using the repossessed assets in Ukraine and all join hands and do everything we can to support Ukraine. So, Secretary General, thanks for being here.
Thank you so much for hosting me and Ambassador Whitaker this morning. And I want to thank the senators for their staunch support for NATO. Since President Trump was re-elected, NATO has been renewed, reinvigorated. We decided in The Hague under his leadership to spend 5% on defense, therefore also basically equalizing what the Europeans and Canada are spending on defense with the US. So the Europeans and the Canadians stepping up. Also when it comes to Ukraine, the President deciding to send weapons again to Ukraine, but paid for by allies. We are working very hard on that project. The first couple of billion of weapons already shipped into Ukraine from the US, paid for by allies. And of course Europeans stepping up when it comes to security assurances for Ukraine post a long-term ceasefire or peace deal. And of course we all pray for that to happen soon. I will see the President later today. We will discuss further how we from NATO can be helpful in delivering his vision of getting a full-scale peace in Ukraine, which of course we all pray for after his enormous success in Gaza. So again, thank you so much for hosting us, Senators, and thank you for your leadership.
We have time for a couple of questions.
Secretary General, Sky News, can we just ask, is your visit here at this moment not an indication that President Trump's meeting with President Zelensky on Friday was a total disaster?
No, not at all, because this was already planned before. I was texting with the President after an enormous success in Gaza, and we said, hey, let's have a meeting in Washington to discuss how we now can deliver his vision on peace in Ukraine. And when it comes to the meeting last week, Friday, you have also heard President Zelensky. I think that was a good meeting. It was a successful meeting. It's exactly what we need. It's the American President who broke the deadlock with Putin in February, took that leadership role, which only he can, and he is delivering. And I'm really commending him for that. So that was a good meeting, and we will build on that.
Secretary General, can I just ask you, recently Donald Trump suggested that Ukraine could win back all lost territory. Now he's saying something quite different. How worried are you that in that phone call with Vladimir Putin, he persuaded the president to go softer on Russia?
Well, I have total confidence in President Trump. And he is the only one who can get this done. He is the leader of the most powerful nation on earth. You are all citizens of the most powerful nation on earth, the most powerful economy, the most powerful military, and you have a president with a lot of experience because of his first term in office and who has a clear vision on bringing this war to a durable and lasting end. He wants that. He wants to end the bloodshed. He wants to end the killing. And he knows how important it is. And this is a big deal for him, for all of us. So his leadership here is crucial. He is clearly providing it. And he has to dialogue with all the leaders. He has to dialogue with Putin. He has to dialogue with Zelensky, exactly as he did in Gaza, putting pressure on all relevant parties to get the deal done. And that's exactly what he is doing here.
Mr. Secretary, right here. Thank you, Senator. Two questions for you. The first, to that end, do you believe another meeting between President Trump and Vladimir Putin would be productive? And second, do you think a ceasefire is necessary before real negotiations can start?
Well, let's start with the second question. The president himself was very clear this weekend. Stop where you are, which sounds simple, but of course is also exactly right. So I was I totally agree with him. Stop where you are. That's the main message. And again, we will dialogue this afternoon further, and I'm there to help him to deliver whatever NATO can do, me personally, the ambassador, all of us can do to help him to deliver on that vision. And clearly going forward, I cannot now predict exactly what type of meetings, in what type of setting will happen. But it will mean a lot of discussions with all the leaders involved, including the presidents of Russia and Ukraine, no doubt.
Should that happen together?
Secretary General, you mentioned the success in Gaza. What do you think can be replicated when it comes to negotiating between Russia and Ukraine? And then to the senators, what do you think is the cost of the delays on sanctions that we've seen so far?
Well, every conflict obviously is different, and at the same time you can draw lessons. And I think what the president did at Gaza, and let's not forget, this is a huge win. And only he was was in a position to do it. And he took the risk, he took the leadership role, and he used the enormous power of the United States and leveraged this with his leadership to get the deal done on Gaza. And I commend him for that. And now he wants to do the same, as he's been doing since February, when he had his first phone call with President Vladimir Putin of Russia. And all the discussions he had with NATO leaders, with, of course, the president of Ukraine. He wants to deliver the same for the war in Ukraine. Again, I cannot now predict exactly by what steps this will all happen. But obviously it will still mean a lot of discussions. It will not end tomorrow. But I'm fairly confident that we can deliver on this vision.
It looks like the summit is on ice now. Do you welcome that delay?
Again, I'm not going to comment on every step in the process because it's very difficult for me to assess exactly how that process will now evolve. But clearly, in the future, there will be many more discussions with the leaders of Ukraine and of Russia in whatever format, in whatever setting, to deliver peace.
Thank you all.
Just on the point of saying one thing that we should be very clear with the Secretary General. We're having discussions about NATO allies putting 5% into meeting 5% standard for NATO support. They're doing things very, very differently, and they're doing things differently because President Trump has pressed the issue. And I believe that President Trump is best positioned to bring a lasting peace to Ukraine. We're going to have discussions about how we can continue to enable him with legislative action on sanctions in particular, which I'm interested in. But I think we also have to follow his lead.
Thank you all very much.
Are you planning to move these bills that you passed as a package?
That hasn't been determined yet.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And that was the ambassador, Mr. Mark Rutte, and Senator Tom Tillis of North Carolina, and Jeanne Shaheen, the senator from New Hampshire, along with Ambassador Matthew Whitaker to NATO on behalf of the United States mission. So some interesting comments there as the pursuit of peace continued, and the good NATO Secretary General just stating his strong relationship with the president and has full faith and confidence in 45 and 47. And that's what we've come to see around the world. So for those who are complaining about renovations on the White House, maybe there should be bigger fish to fry, as we saw just there with NATO Secretary General and the Senate oversight in regards to finding a lasting peace in Russia and Ukraine. Thank you to all our sponsors here at Right Side Broadcasting Network on this fine Wednesday, October 22nd, 2025. It's mypillow.com/RSBN. The 6-piece towel set is back in stock. This normally goes for $70. Yes, 70, down under 40. $39.98, a very limited quantity, so call today. Do not delay. It is 800-836-7566, mypillow.com/RSBN. Support Mr. Mike Lindell. And Right Side Broadcasting Network shopping now. 2,000 products on this website. He loves free speech. He loves election integrity. Heck, he might even be the governor of Minnesota. Let's hope so. It'd be fun to get him into that race. This man, the master marketer, as President Trump put it, Mike Lindell. Thank you for your patriotism and for a great American company. Also, you can donate to your go-to live desk. We deeply appreciate all of your support as we take on the legacy media and get the truth out there on the right side of history. rsbnetwork.com/donate. You may also text RSBN to 801-801. rsbnetwork.com/donate. Text RSBN to 801-801. There's also an address for check or money order. 1550 Opelika Road, Suite 6, Box 344. The loveliest village on the plains, Auburn, Alabama, 36830. That's 1550 Opelika Road, Suite 6, Box 344, Auburn, Alabama, 36830. I'd like to thank you for tuning in this morning. As some breaking news, sadly, drones from Russia look like they have struck kindergarten in the Ukraine. So this terrible situation continues as peace is being sought. Get all America First updates and exclusive offers at Right Side Broadcasting Network, rsbnetwork.com/newsletter. I'd like to thank House Speaker Mike Johnson and GOP leadership earlier for updates on day 22 of the government shutdown, as well as our exclusive interview this morning with Congressman Moore of Alabama. Barry Moore, who is running for the United States Senate in the Yellowhammer State. Thank you for joining us early this morning, as it is a good morning, America. I hope it's sunny and filled with just a gorgeous day ahead of you, whether you're in the federal city or right here in Auburn, Alabama, or if you're way out on the West Coast. God be with you in your neck of the woods. As today, the Catholic Church celebrates the feast day of Pope St. John Paul II, someone who was a strict anti-communist. These are some photos I took, the Pieta there in the church, the Basilica of St. Mary's, that is in Phoenix, Arizona, during our trip last month to cover the service of Charlie Kirk. And St. John Paul II knelt right there in prayer, September 14th, 1987. I knelt there myself. It was one of my favorite places to pray when I did live in Phoenix, Arizona, during my operations and assistance with Turning Point USA during my tenure there. In 2017, specifically into 2018, and a statue of the late, great anti-communist and one of the world's most famous modern figures for peace, prosperity, and religious liberty. Yes, John Paul II, Karol Wojtyła of Poland, who would take a bullet himself and then forgive his would-be assailant, someone who changed modern history with the work of Ronald Reagan and Margaret Thatcher, to take on communism and extremism, and someone who suffered under the totalitarian communist Soviet Union as a result post-World War II, but someone who bravely and proclaimed, be not afraid, especially to young people. Go out there and serve the Lord and serve your community to the best of your ability. Someone who transformed the entire world as a result of his life. It's his feast day today, and my thought is, I just have this vision of him and Charlie together in heaven wearing their socialism sucks shirts. You know, they were boldly proclaiming the truth and the gospel, and may we all fill the big shoes that they left for us as we remember Pope St. John Paul II, Karol Wojtyła of Poland, and the late, great Charlie Kirk. Some photos there from the recent visit to Phoenix, Arizona last month. Get all America First updates and exclusive offers at rsbnetwork.com/newsletter. May the Lord be with you and have a wonderful Wednesday. We might have some afternoon coverage today. If not, we will see you very soon. And let's continue to make America great again. For all my colleagues here at Right Side Broadcasting, I'm Robert McNeely. We will see you very soon.
Welcome to Right Side Broadcasting Network, your trusted conservative news outlet. At RSBN, we deliver the truth when the mainstream media falls short. Since 2015, we've proudly broadcasted every single one of President Trump's iconic MAGA rallies, bringing you the excitement and energy live before anyone else. By watching RSBN, you get an unfiltered front row view of the action on the ground. We interviewed the crowds to give a voice to millions of Americans just like you. We show you President Trump's speeches in their entirety, free from interruptions and censorship. We cover the stories that matter to you with the integrity and passion you deserve. Thank you for choosing RSBN as your home for America First News. Together, we stand strong, united, and informed. So join us and be part of the right side of history.
Tired of being told no by your doctor, your pharmacy, or worse, your insurance company? You're not alone. Millions of Americans are waking up to a broken healthcare system. That's why more and more people are turning to all-family pharmacy. We believe in medical freedom. We deliver the prescription and the medication, all from licensed U.S. doctors and pharmacists, from ivermectin and trusted antibiotics to maintenance medications, even NAD+, the revolutionary anti-aging supplement. Use code RSBN10 at checkout for 10% off your first order.
Every once in a while, something big happens, something that changes everything. And now, in a defining moment for crypto, Trump Media Group and Crypto.com are joining forces to acquire up to $6.4 billion of CRO, launching America's first ever CRO treasury, empowering the Kronos blockchain. This is more than a partnership. It's the future of finance built in America. For more, visit Crypto.com, where millions trade CRO every day.
Hey y'all, it's Silk from the Diamond and Silk Chit Chat live show. Look, don't forget to check me out right here on RSBN Network. Be sure to watch the show on Right Side Broadcasting Network, and I want you to support Right Side Broadcasting Network. Yes, it's imperative that you do so, okay? I look to see y'all soon. Bye-bye.